changing this. Hello, everyone. This is I think it was our first book club with the visual element. So if you're strictly a book club person, this is going to be the first episode that you will have seen us. If you're going on the YouTube side, if you're listening to the podcast, then if you want to jump on and watch this episode on YouTube, you can see us now. So that's a newer thing since our last book club. But yeah, we're here for number 8 of The Wastelands. I almost said Drawing of the Three. It happened to me last time too. Something's wrong with my brain. I keep wanting to draw back to Drawing of the Three.
It's one of your favorite books.
Well, either that or it's just the repetition of doing it how many times for the last for that book. So, it did. I don't even remember. I think it was 20, at least in the 20s. So we definitely did that intro a lot. So, on the YouTube side, welcome. Just want to let you know as an intro before we even start the podcast that we are actually a podcast, and we moved into YouTube some years back. We've been doing the podcast for over 5 years now. We came onto YouTube, I don't even know, a couple years back, 2-3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago now, primarily so that we could have live streams for our audience. And just recently we added cameras to the whole thing. So we are going to just kind of go full video. But primarily this is a podcast, so that's still kind of the setting of what we're doing. Although keep an eye on the channel because we're going to start doing maybe some reactions and stuff like that as things come for Stephen King stuff, because that's what we primarily cover. We're a Dark Tower podcast, but the Dark Tower it has many levels, and those levels pretty much contain the entire of the King universe. So we like to talk about all things King. So that be on the lookout for that for the channel. But we just wanted to give you that intro because I noticed a few times ago it dawned on me that we always just kind of jump in and say hi to the listeners and stuff, and if you were jumping into the thing without knowing what we were doing, you wouldn't know what was going on. So that's what we got here. And hello, Mark, glad you're joining us. My thing just showed 0, but I know you're in it, so it's again YouTube. You can't trust them, man. No. Can't trust them for the live stream stuff. We are here on the verge of the 4th of July in the United States. I mean, everywhere, technically, for the date, but it's only meaningful here in the United States. And I also saw it's been going around that this year, if you're listening to it live, the 4th of July will be the 100th anniversary of Jack Torrance's party at the end of The Shining.
Yeah, we got that in our Discord for our Patreons yesterday.
Yeah, I've even had I've had a couple friends send it to me, like text wise. I've seen it all over Twitter and stuff. Because yes, it's 1921. The picture at the very end of the Kubrick film, The Shining, where you see Jack as part of the whole party. It is the 4th of July party for 1921. Mm-hmm. So we're about on the 100th anniversary starting tomorrow.
It was Alan that sent us that in the Discord.
Yeah. So that's pretty cool. Maybe a good excuse to watch The Shining again if that's something you need to look for an excuse for.
Is there an excuse needed to watch The Shining? I mean, it's The Shining.
Yeah, not for me, but I mean, if for some reason you were needing some kind of excuse, it's a perfect excuse. Watch it tomorrow, maybe the early part of the day. Watch The Shining, and then later on, blow up a small piece of your country because that's the best way to celebrate its birthday, right?
Or don't, because we're severely dry. And
I mean, here in Utah, yes. I mean, other states, they're probably safer to do such things.
In some states, yeah. I bet you California's just whimpering right now.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and jump in. We'll hit the intro real quick, and then we'll start the podcast proper. We've got a lot to cover in this episode in terms of, because we always try to plan out what we're going to cover, and we're right at the very tail end of this chapter, this full chapter. So we will finish it this time and start into the next chapter on the next book club. So let's go ahead and hit the intro and get started.
The Dark Tower by Stephen King. The man in black fled across the desert, and the gunslinger followed. Go then. There are other worlds than these. Death, but not for you, gunslinger. It's time we had our own palaver, I think, and it's going to take a while.
And yet, dauntless, the slug horn to my lips I set, and blew. Child Roland to the dark tower came.
We are quartet, one from many. Let the palaver begin.
Hello and welcome to Dark Tower Palaver. This is our podcast covering Stephen King's magnum opus, The Dark Tower series. My name is Tad.
And I'm Peter.
And we're here for a book club, part 8 of The Wastelands. It's quite a lovely place we left off, too. But first of all, we'll hit the intro before we dive in too deep, but we're going to speed through it because we got a lot to talk about in this episode. A lot of fun stuff to cover. First of all, if you want to, we're not going to worry about spoilers because we only cover where we're at or before in these episodes. So if you are not finished with the 7 primary books, this is a safe episode for you, unless somehow you are further behind than we are. Oh, not behind necessarily because, we're doing our thing. But if somehow you're not
as far as
lapping us at some point, then just maybe wait a couple weeks. You'll probably be well beyond where we're at. And then these episodes are safe because we won't, drop like spoilers about the end of the series on you or anything like our roundtables, which are dangerous places for those who have not finished. Next up, if you want to find us, you can find us on a number of services like Apple Podcasting. You can stream us on Spotify or Stitcher, or you can find us on any podcast catching app out there. There's a ton of them, and I think everyone has their preferences, and we should be on all of those. If you want to subscribe, rate, and review us on any of those services that allow that, we would definitely appreciate that, especially ratings and reviews. Those things tend to dictate whether something is featured, which is always a good way to grow listeners. So if you do that, we definitely appreciate it. You can also find our show notes at darktowerpalaver.com. Our show notes are generally everything that we're covering in the episode. When it's a roundtable for book clubs, there's not really a whole lot to put on there. So if you want to check out the website, darktowerpalaver.com, there's all kinds of useful links. You can find all of our social media links as well as our store. We're both wearing our Dark Tower paraphernalia. You can find the links to that as well on there. There's a little box on the side with all the different things. The merchandise is under it looks like a box, like a closed box. Just go ahead and click on that and it'll bring you over to our store where you can also buy some of these. If you want to buy the Dark Tower logo or the slanderous shirt that I don't know why I allowed to be created,
it's because you secretly like being evil.
Next thing you know, you're going to want me to, get some kind of thing to, malign my boy Flag, and that will never happen.
You won't stand for it?
No, absolutely
Oh, no?
not. Absolutely not. And then next up, also, if you want to support the show, you can do that on Patreon at patreon.com/darktowerpalaver. We have a number of different levels with different benefits. And one of the best things, we have our monthly hangouts. We just did one recently because we're a little bit late for June. We did that yesterday. And then we're going to do one again later this month, as well as you'll have access to our Discord server where you can go ahead and stab Peter with a dagger throughout the week. You don't have to wait for a show to do it because, let's face it, everyone has fun with it.
Again, hashtag Tad is terrible. I mean, this is what he lives for, is to be called out like this.
I don't know about that. I think it's slanderous. I don't think I'm terrible. I think I'm a lovable character. And then also, if you want to contact us, if you are listening for the first time, we consider you part of our extended quartet, and we welcome you, and we would love to hear from you. And there's a number of ways that you can do that you can interact with us, and Peter can let you know what those are.
Best way to reach us is email. It's darktowerpalaver@gmail.com. We stream all of our shows on YouTube. It's youtube.com/darktowerpalaver. Tad was mentioning it in the intro for our YouTube video. We're here now. We have cameras for almost all of our shows going forward. So make sure to like the video, subscribe, ring the bell to get notifications so you know when we're going live. Then our social media is facebook.com/darktowerpalaver. And then our Twitter is @darktowerpod. That's @darktowerpod. And then Instagram is darktowerpalaver, all one word, no spaces on it.
Yes, indeed. We left off last time at an interesting thing. Just the last line there, as Jake finds himself in the abandoned lot here, the vacant lot. And it says, lying in the cluster of scrubby burdock plants, Jake saw the key, and beyond that, the rose. Which is obviously interesting because it's not a rose, it's the rose. That's definitely something that jumps out a little bit. So yeah, that was the last thing that we left off with, which was a fun little next time on, serial classic old serial things would end with like the most ridiculous cliffhangers, and that felt like a cliffhanger at points. If I would have stopped reading there the first time, I would have been pissed. Like if I had to, like go to bed or go to work or something, there was always different things that would force you to stop. Bed, not so much. I could always give up sleep, and I did many times. I definitely would have kept reading if it were, 3 hours, 4 hours until I had to wake up. I still would have kept reading if that would have been where I stopped. But
you always did the I think we talked about this before. You always did oh man, this is so good. What time is it? How long do I have until I have to get up? Yeah, I can keep going. I can go on 4 hours of sleep.
Yeah.
It's only school.
Yeah, no kidding. So that leads us into here, subchapter 17. Let me get over to my notes here, and this is of subchapter 17. We're in currently chapter 2, which is called Key and Rose, which I guess is also what keys us in a little bit. So to speak, is the title of the chapter being Key and Rose. And the last thing we read before signing off last time was a key and a rose. So we're getting to the heart of it, as it were, of the subchapter, or of this chapter at least. As a reader, that's how I would interpret it anyway. So let's go ahead and dive into subchapter 17. And it starts off here. I have a note right off the bat. It says his legs betrayed him and he fell to his knees. He was vaguely aware that he was weeping, even more vaguely aware that he had wet his pants a little. He crawled forward on his knees and reached toward the key lying in the snarl of burdocks. Its simple shape was one that he seemed to have seen in his dream. And then I actually have a slide because King gives us a image in the book here, and it's one that most of us are familiar with because we've seen it earlier in this book. I remember getting this, and I'm like, no, this is wrong. I must have like cycled back somehow because we've already passed this picture. I remember screen grabbing it for the slideshow, so there's no way this is where we're at. And then I'm like, oh wait, no, actually he shows it to us again. So yes, this is what Jake is seeing here. And then it says he thought the little S shape at the end, that is the secret. So kind of connecting the two worlds that we've been experiencing so far in this book. Eddie obviously saw this in the fire and is keenly aware that he's going to have to carve it out of that branch that he found. And he's kind of stressing about it. So it's kind of interesting now for Jake to be finding basically the same key in our world. So definitely interesting, and I remember being super giddy about that because it was connection, like further connection, because of course Jake, like we know his whole parallel paths thing, but like this is the first time past that now that we're seeing something that connects, where it's just like
Roland and him are having the same kind of issues of I died, I didn't die, there was a boy, there was no boy, but this is the first time that we have a linkage between not what happened, but what's happening with the gunslinger.
Yeah. And of key, of course, is something that is a very handy thing at opening doors and whatnot. So I remember thinking to myself that, Jake, we read about the madness he had with doors and wanting to open doors and look onto the other world. In my mind, it's like, well, magic key, that's the kind of thing now that at some point you're probably going to be facing a door that will allow this key to open it. And that's the way I thought, because I don't know, I don't want to say it's cliche because I don't think it's that necessarily, but I do think it's something that's like familiar when it comes to literature and stuff like that is, because what better thing than a key to open some kind of door down the road it's great storytelling device. So I remember being excited by it though. What do you got next?
Right after that, as Jake neared this clump of alien grass, oh no, I skipped one. They both start with as, so that's what threw me off.
Oh yeah.
As he closed his hand around the key, the voices rose in a harmonic shout of triumph. Jake's own cry was lost in the voice of that choir, because he was hearing voices as he was crossing the lot. To get to the rose and the key. He saw the key flash white within his fingers and felt a tremendous jolt of power run up his arm. It was as if he had grasped a live tension wire, but there was no pain.
So that's definitely interesting.
I don't know if I've ever felt like power without pain like that, Like, obviously that's something like kind of like supernatural-ish, To be like, what I always come to mind is, Excalibur, having the sword and being like, huzzah, you know,
Yeah.
like there's that power that comes with that.
Yeah.
You know, that always comes to my mind as like the sword. You haven't seen it, but Harry Potter, the wand chooses the wizard. So you do like this whole thing where you're trying out different wands and nothing happens, but then when you get the wand that for you, like it's like whoa, you know, it's like that.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm picturing here.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. I think that's Star Wars definitely took a riff on that a little bit with the Clone Wars, expanded on how Jedi get their lightsaber crystals. And it's kind of similar where it's almost kind of a journey thing. And it like, yeah, it's almost like they're selected or whatever. There's some kind of drawing that they have to their crystals. So yeah, definitely. And like I do like the King calls that out with the power because I think that, or the no pain, because I think that you would just assume pain.
Well, especially if it's as if he grabbed a live tension wire,
high tension wire,
a live high tension wire. Like, that's going to be painful. If you grab one of those.
Yeah.
As someone who's touched electric fences before and electrocuted myself in front of you twice.
The same way.
The exact same way. There's definitely pain involved with that.
Yeah. Yes, indeed.
I don't know if it's okay. So someone corrected me on this. I don't know if it's technically I didn't electrocute myself. I received an electric shock because electrocute yourself isn't that where you're actually like suffering a certain amount of damage and have to go to the hospital and everything.
I don't know.
Someone corrected me on that once, and it's like you're not electrocuted if you get like like if you touch like an electric fence, like one of those shock fences for cattle.
Yeah,
that's not an electrocution. That's an electric shock. So
okay. Yeah.
I received 2 electric shocks in front of Ted, one of which almost caused me to fall off of a ladder.
Oh man, and it is as funny as it sounds. By the way, I just want. So then, next thing I have here, it says he opened Charlie the Choo-Choo and put the key inside. Then he fixed his eyes upon the rose again and realized that it was the real key, the key to everything. He crawled towards it, his face a flaming corona of light, his eyes blazing wells of blue fire. So that's a interesting way for King to write that. That's why I wanted to highlight it. It's just I love the way that's written. His face a flaming corona of light, his eyes blazing wells of blue fire. That's just
that's really cool.
Very descriptive. And I don't know. Have we heard that Jake has blue eyes yet? I don't know.
I think so.
Yeah, I don't know. I certainly don't remember. So so that I do like that. I just got to give King some props there on his word choices, as well as I don't like the idea of putting a key in a book. That just seems like you're gonna damn. I mean, not because I don't picture this being like a flat key, like you're gonna get it like the Lowe's or Home Depot. I feel like this is like one of those skeleton keys. It's like kind of fat and round, like it's like an old key, right? Something that you'd have at like The Haunting of Hill House, not from freaking whatever. So I just feel like it's like would deform the book. And you're
picturing like the 1700 French jails with the big key that.
like in every Mickey Mouse cartoon, the key in that. Yeah, that's what I'm picturing here. I mean, with the way that the end of this thing looks, I certainly don't picture it being like a Schlage
the key. Thicker than this.
It's
like a thick key.
Yeah, as thick as a phone, but just round and stuff. Yeah, that's what I picture. So him putting in the book, that does upset me a little bit because that's how you ruin your stuff there, Jake.
Dude, it's just a key. It's just a little thin key. That's all.
I don't know. I don't trust it. But what do you got next?
As Jake neared the clump of alien grass, the rose began to open before his eyes. It disclosed a dark scarlet furnace, petal upon secret petal, each burning with its own secret fury. He had never seen anything so intensely and utterly alive in his whole life. And now, as he stretched one grimy hand out toward this wonder, the voices began to sing his own name, and deadly fear began to steal in toward the center of his heart. It was as cold as ice and as heavy as stone. So he's found the keys, put it away, and now he's approaching this rose, and
definitely
it's opening up for him.
Yeah, and it's definitely strange. I remember being really interested, right? Almost the same kind of like interest of like, oh, Roland opened a door and it's into a 747. Like there was just like making me scoot closer to the book, type thing. This felt the same way because it was just like none of this seemed right. This isn't normal, right?
Yeah, especially here, he's like happy about the key, happy about the rose at first, but now he's got this deadly fear began to steal in toward the center of his heart. So like, wait a minute, what's going on? So the rose is opening, and all of a sudden he's terrified.
Yeah, definitely strange. And I remember just kind of wanting to know more, but definitely felt out of the ordinary. I'm certain I've come across a number of wildflowers in my life, but I don't think I've ever. I don't know.
I've never had one bloom right in front of me.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know about you, but I've never, looked at a flower, walked up to a flower, and have it go.
Yeah. I mean,
that's a unique experience in and of itself, right there.
Maybe an egg on LV-426.
What?
Opening up in front of you. Alien?
Oh.
The eggs?
I'm not that big of an alien nerd.
Oh, it's one of my favorites. Okay, so then going on here, it says there was something wrong. He could feel pulsing discord like a deep and ugly scratch across some priceless work of art, or a deadly fever smoldering beneath the chilly skin of an invalid's brow. It was something like a worm, an invading worm, and a shape, one that lurks just beyond the next turn of the road. And I got to give King credit there. That's
a terrifying image.
Especially that last bit, one which lurks just beyond the next turn of the road. That's a damn good sentence there. I like that a lot.
The worst part about it is that I've had that driving at night, especially where my in-laws live. So coming home is through a canyon, and there's parts of that canyon that are twisty-turny, the kind that you're like, if I drive straight instead of turning, I'm going off like a cliff.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. So there's always been that. I've had this idea for a story which involves a deserted road, a beast, of course, and people in a car. And the beast is terrorizing the people in the car throughout their drive as they try to escape, because there's literally nothing that they can stop and take shelter or stop and get help. And I've always kind of liked that idea, but it's also implanted in my brain that every time I'm going to come around a curve, there it's going to be, but it's like, oh no, wait, no, it just ran around the next one. Which is of course impossible.
Yeah.
That's a half a mile down the road or something like that. It just darted around it.
Don't doubt the beast.
No.
Don't doubt the beast. So yeah, I love the imagery here that King's drawing on to explain it. Same thing as what did he say? A deep and ugly scratch across a priceless work of art.
Yeah.
It's what he's definitely conveying a lot in very, very beautiful words. I just love. I got to give King a lot of credit for how he's writing it here.
He's so good at that,
yeah,
isn't he?
Yeah, definitely.
But then also on top of beautiful description, then he adds the one which lurks just beyond the next turn of the road.
Yeah,
which is just
yeah. Maybe boot heels clocking on the highway there.
I'm not scared of that.
Oh, you would be though.
I would be if I was there, but I'm not Bobby Tyler, so.
Well, there is Larry at one point when they're on the trip. He wakes up and hears
boot heels.
Yeah, so you don't have to be Bobby Tyler. Although that,
you're reading The Stand right now.
I am
listening to it.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes, I am in the middle of it currently. Well, not in the middle. I'm getting close to the end.
Closer and closer.
Body removal.
You're walking closer and closer.
Yes, to the tragic end of Randall Flagg and his. It's like I told you yesterday in our hangout for the Patreon people. It's a tragedy that I steel myself against having to face every time I read it. Is the tragedy of my boy and his untimely end.
Untimely.
So what do you got next?
So as the flower's opening, he's looking at the that would be the center of it. He leaned closer and saw that the concentrated circle of blazing yellow was not pollen at all. It was a sun. A vast forge burning at the center of the rose, glowing in the purple grass. The fear returned, only now it had become outright terror. It's right, he thought. Everything here is right, but it could go wrong. Has started going wrong already, I think. I'm being allowed to feel as much of the wrongness as I can bear, but what is it, and what can I do?
Yeah, and that's definitely intrigues me. Just the idea, now when you read this and it says it was a sun, do you actually how do you visualize that when you're reading it?
For the first time I pictured, a kid's cartoon sun kind of thing, just
Yeah.
yellow,
The smiley face
kind of thing.
sunglasses.
Well, not without the face and the sunglasses, you ass. But just a
Find
yellow
me a kid's
sun.
picture that doesn't have that. That's all I'm saying.
I can do that.
Unless they do that cheap corner thing where they just put like the yellow on the corner and just draw like 15 degrees of a circle.
But I'm just picturing like the circle with like the rays coming off of it.
Okay.
But
yeah.
like if someone drew a sun, like a kid's picture, the kid drew a sun. I'm just picturing yellow with it like kind of like giving off light, like glowing,
Yeah.
But as I've reread it, I started wondering if it's more like when you see those videos of this, or like a video game or a movie depicts the sun, you see like the roaring waves of the sun as the light and everything like that. That started what's started more coming into my mind, especially with it being like like burning at the center of the rose, not just sitting there giving off light. It's burning. Well, if something's burning, you're gonna have like that fiery.
Yeah.
And I'm picturing like the sun's surface.
Yeah.
When you have like think of like any Superman where Superman flies past the sun, you got the flares that are coming up, but at the surface of the sun is not just concentrated. It's not flat and just that. There's like a rolling, almost like an ocean of fire and light coming off of it.
So, and I guess that's what I'm asking is like, and it sounds like you've evolved on it. Is do you read that as literal, or do you read that as like figurative of like, oh, it's just a really bright and like striking yellow, and it's like a sun, but it says it was a sun. So I'm just curious how you read it, because like I remember the first time reading it, I was just like, this is just like the exaggerations of a child, and like it's just like there's brightness to it and like whatever, but like I'm with you. I think I've evolved a little bit more as I've read it further, where I do think that maybe it's actually, it's not him being a kid and like exaggerating, but he's actually potentially seeing like almost it is supernatural, like a supernatural event of some kind, where he's literally seeing like a sun at the center of this rose.
And
here.
that's exactly what we both did with our reading. Is exactly what he did. It's not just something glowing. It's not just a sun. It doesn't just look like a sun. It is a sun. And so if it is a sun, then you're going to see that.
Yeah, Cody says, it's ironic you guys are talking about getting electrocuted while I was wiring my electrical panel. Or is it ironic? He asks as a question.
Ooh.
Well, let me just give you a hint from Peter. If you're plugging in a TV and you have to like reach around the back of it to plug it in, don't use your fingers to guide the prongs into the hole. And if you do that, don't do it again.
Yeah.
Don't do it again immediately after getting zapped the first time.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never done it with an electrical thing, but I will say that's how I would do it generally, right? If you're trying to guide something into some sort of a hole that you can't see, like if you're around a corner. I do it at work all the time, where I'm putting something together and it's like, whatever. And like, but like that's the best way to like, or if it's in the dark, right? If you're trying to like, whatever, if you have like the toothbrush with like the little cup thing and it has a hole, like if you can't see,
you're gonna feel for it, and then you're gonna guide it in.
Yeah,
that's what it was. I was reaching up under something and trying to plug in a TV, and I had probably this much space to fit my arm in and get it plugged in, so I couldn't get two hands in there. I couldn't lift it up. It was already put together.
Yeah, it was like bolted in.
Yeah,
it certainly wasn't an ideal circumstance. Certainly.
So use my fingers to guide it in, and God, I almost fall off the ladder. Tad grabs me and steadies me, and then I recovered a little bit. Tad's like, dude, like, are you seriously? Like, I'm not gonna lie. This is one of the few times Tad's actually shown genuine concern for me, because I was up on a ladder trying to do this for a TV display at the store we were working at. And I'm like, no, I think I'm okay. My arm hurts a little bit. He's like, okay.
You have like that tingly feeling.
I did. I have that tingly feeling in my arm and everything. Reached it. I fucking did it again. At that point, Ted's like, get down off the ladder. We're going to lunch.
Oh, man. So, Cody, I don't want to say I'm an expert at irony, but yes, that does seem, certainly seems in that vein.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that is interesting when it comes to like the whole sun thing. Cause I remember just thinking like, and I think for me, it's because it's like, even though we're not necessarily in a realistic book, we've already seen enough to know that like, we're not in Kansas anymore, Toto. Like, this is not a series where like everything's grounded. but I think like there just is like this inherent like bias that I had that like something like that you're actually going to see a sun inside of a rose, like no, that's stupid. Like this it's just a super bright thing, and it's just, you know, Jake taking it too far. Like he's a kid and he's just over dramatic kind of thing. Yeah. So, but then I've certainly evolved because it's like, no, what, obviously there's a lot going on here, even just this whole terror. And I love that I'm not being allowed to feel as much of that wrong, or I'm being allowed to feel as much of that wrongness as I can bear. I like that too, because I remember that making me kind of scooch in a little bit closer to the book. You know, of course that's a figure of speech. I'm close to the book as it is, but you know, if it was a screen, you'd lean in type thing.
Edge of your seat kind of thing.
Yeah, because it's like, that's interesting because now you're giving this rose like sentience. Like it's thinking, and it's actually protecting Jake. Like, and that's how he perceives it anyway. And I remember thinking that's very, very interesting because it's like, oh shit, like, you know, something, even if I skip that, not thinking anything of it, but then when, you know, he's thinking that it's all going wrong or something's going wrong, but then he, you know, Jake basically feeling that he's being shielded from the larger truth. That's interesting to me. That was very, interesting because it's like, oh, okay, like and then that opened my mind a little bit to like, okay, this is something else here. You know, I mean, obviously we've seen a lot. We've seen that like this whole area is kind of, I don't want to say polluted, that's probably the right word, but like it's like polluted with happiness, right? Like no matter what, when people come into this area, their disposition is changing and stuff. Jake has been hearing these voices for a couple weeks now, and they're gone now in this area. So it's like, we understand something, but like as I'm reading this the first time, I'm like, there's no way that like it has anything to do with this lot. Like it's got to be something else. And, you know, let alone, even when it's a rose and stuff, even though that's the title of the chapter, I'm not sitting there going, oh, this rose is some whatever. It's just like, it's a rose, whatever, you know. But then as this keeps progressing on, I'm like, okay, King's kind of changing my mind a little bit. I remember thinking that where I'm just like, what is going on here? And then when like now Jake's basically given sentience to this rose and that it's protecting him from some larger truth, it's like, that's like God of the Bible type stuff of like,
right, yeah,
you know, like in the
burning bush kind of thing.
Yeah, where it's like, you know, like, yeah, there's various times like the Old Testament where like God is manifested in some way, but it's always in a way that like not poof, here I am. Yeah,
here's God.
It's not like Monty Python where like the face shows up in the clouds. Like, what are you doing?
It's a burning bush. Isn't
there one time too where like Moses or someone, like they're like tucked under a rock and like God passes over in a way to where like they're shielded from seeing him type thing, because it's like, it's just because it's like a thing where like if you see, like, it will kill you. And I kind of got that impression with this a little bit, and that's where it was just like, okay. And, you know, sentience again, that's the thing too, because it's like, I'm only being allowed. It's like, well, I kind of, and maybe that's a leap in logic, but I gave that sentience to the rose and not some like alien force that's like, you know, friggin' Martian the Manhunter.
It gives me the vibes of, you haven't watched it, but Supernatural introduces not aliens, wrong A word, angels in some of the later seasons.
Yeah, what's the difference?
And the angels can't come to Earth unless they have a vessel, so a human has to, you know, accept, like what you're talking about, them.
Yeah.
And then the angel is confined within the human. But if a human saw an angel in person, their eyes would be burned out and they would die. So that's what you're talking about. It's something like that. There's this powerful being that's contained, maybe, and everything like that, and that's what you were thinking here.
Well, yeah, especially because it says only as much as I can bear. So that makes me think that the full wrongness, if just the way I read that, bear means that like as much as he can bear. That means that if the full wrongness were shown him, he would just die.
Exactly.
Like it would kill him. And that's where it's just like, okay, this is this is a lot bigger than
they're just a flower in a vacant lot in New York City.
Yeah. And I actually don't know that I had necessarily, like, reading this the first time, like, I still think I was waiting for some kind of reveal for what was maybe causing all this.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I wasn't thinking that the rose had anything to do with it. Like, I just thought it was just
the beings or the powers way of directing it to Jake, like filtering it so that he can view it.
Yeah, because like, and also Jake is like was fascinated by like the dudes playing tic-tac-toe. There was just certain things he was drawn to, so it's like cool. He's drawn to a key, drawn to rose. I just expect all this is just like cookie crumbs to the whatever it might be that we're getting towards. But
gotcha.
You know, then when you get to that line, it's like, oh, okay, no, like there's like this shifted my whole mind's eye, because now it's like, okay, there's, whatever. And and then of course, as reading it more like in the future and getting the idea that the son is like not just a child's exaggeration, that like potentially he's seeing like something pretty powerful there. It's like, okay, that's kind of how my mind evolved, is in reading it. Then a little bit further down here, it says he leaned closer to the rose and saw that its core was not just one sun, but many, perhaps all suns, contained within a ferocious yet fragile shell. But it's wrong. It's all in danger. Knowing it would almost surely mean his death to touch that glowing microcosm, but helpless to stop himself, Jake reached forward. There was no curiosity or terror in his gesture, only a great, inarticulate need to protect the rose. And that's the end of the subchapter there. So certainly touching it definitely didn't seem like a good idea to me. When as this conveying, because like obviously that kind of maybe changed my mind a little bit, where it's like, it's not just one son but many. Like, I don't know, the first time I don't remember that necessarily changing my mind, that it was still a child's exaggeration, but like maybe that it's like that he's realizing maybe that whatever he's exaggerating is so much more than he thought it was. But I still kind of viewed it through the paradigm of an exaggeration the first time reading it. I remember that. But definitely though, as all this is coming down through these pages, to have Jake reaching out, it definitely made me nervous. It's like, no, don't touch it, you fool.
Don't touch it.
Yeah, that doesn't seem like a good idea for your health.
It's like the people that scream at the theater, no, don't go in there, the horror films. Run! Idiot, run!
Yeah, it just didn't seem like a good idea. It's like, come on, kid, you just dodged a bullet for your death. Like, don't start, like, whatever. I mean...
Let's not add a third voice to... the rose killed you. No, it didn't. Third and fourth voice.
You're just gonna keep going here and getting many voices. I mean, we've already seen this kid die twice here, so we don't need to see it a third time. So jumping into subchapter 18, what do you got?
Right off the bat, when he came back to himself, he was at first only aware that a great deal of time had passed and his head hurt like hell. What happened? Was I mugged? He rolled over and sat up, and another blast of pain went through his head. He raised a hand to his left temple, and his fingers came away sticky with blood. He looked down and saw a brick poking out of the weeds. Its rounded corner was too red. If it had been sharp, I'd probably be dead or in a coma.
Yeah, so I love this, like, in terms of, like, because, again, usually when I read, I'm, like, kind of translating it to like watching something, like I'm visualizing it in like a way to where, like, we mentioned before, sometimes I don't necessarily like fill in characters, sometimes they're just shadows to me, but I do, I'm like whatever, but I love like transitions and stuff especially. And so there it's like he's going to touch it, and then like cut, next scene, and he's just like, and like, what? you don't know as you're reading this. I love how this is like unrolled here. He's like, he came back to himself, and then he feels a bunch of time has passed. What happened? Was I mugged? And I love this because it says he rolled over and sat up. So now he's like on the ground, like, because you don't get that right away that he's laying down. So I love the way the king does that, because like that's how I had highlighted it. It's like, what happened? Was I mugged? And then all I highlighted was he rolled over and sat up, because it's like it just, I love the way that King reveals that to you, where it's like he wasn't just like blacked out for a second, came back, and he's like still on his hands and he's looking at the rose. No, now he's like laying down, rolled over. Like,
there's a couple times in either movies or TV shows
comedy,
that it happens where like someone's reaching out for something, and then someone zaps them or teleports them somewhere else, and all of a sudden it's like they're turned and they're like falling over or something like that. I can't remember what show it's from, but there's one where a guy is like throwing. I'm trying not to do it away from the mic, but here, like, throws his head back like that.
Yeah,
and the camera goes up his face, so it stays on his face as he throws his head back.
Yeah,
and then it stays on him, and he closes his eyes for a second, and then it only is his face, and then when it opens back up, it's him flat on his back with his head up. So he was standing, threw his arms up in like the I've been shot pose.
Yeah.
And then the camera pans up to look at his face, and he's laying on his back. It's kind of like that. It's like, oh, well, we just had a scene transition, and we didn't even know it was happening.
Yeah.
That's what just happened here, is that he went from reaching out to waking up after some time has passed.
Yeah, and it just feels comedic to me, like if I actually like see it in my head, like, because again, he's reached for the rose, and it's just like the scene fades out, and then it comes back and he's like on the ground laid. It's I don't know why it makes me laugh.
I don't know why that's comedic to you. Like,
because it's just, I don't know. Because again, if he was just like sitting there on his hands and knees and he's like still like maybe he was pulling his hand away from the rose, like cool, like that's not funny. But the fact that he's like passed out, like it's like a character that like gets a drink, his first drink, and then as he's going to put it to his lips, it cuts and it like comes in this next morning and he's like passed out. You just
empty liquor bottles all around him.
I just feel super comedy, maybe just because it's such a sharp change, and I think that's what it is. But it cracks me up, and he rolled over. So yeah, I do love that. It cracks me up. Then it goes down a little bit further here. It says it was 4:15 in the afternoon. He had been lying here dead to the world for at least 5 hours. So yeah, because remember he had left school pretty early on. Was he in his second class or something?
First class. They had the morning assembly and then first class.
Didn't he have his French class though? First?
No, he just saw his French teacher on his way to the morning assembly.
Okay, I was thinking they had his French class. Either way, he's very early in the morning, and yeah, so the fact that it's 4:15 in the afternoon, so yeah, it's basically all day. Then it says his father probably had the cops out looking for him by now, and it didn't seem to matter much. It seemed to Jake that he had walked out of Piper School about 1,000 years ago. And yeah, I do love that because I feel like I've experienced that a number of times in my life where whether it's a single day or a week, sometimes you're just like, oh yeah, what happened on Monday? I mean, hell, 2020 was that way, right? Where it's just like, it's like the year felt like a decade. Mm-hmm. So sometimes you just have those. So I just love whenever things like that show up in books that feel very real. Because, yeah, sometimes it's like, oh, something happened in the morning. And by the time you're going to bed at night, you're like, that felt like it was 10 years ago that happened.
It's funny. Me and my wife have that every now and then. We had it yesterday a little bit because me and you have the hangout. So I left the house. We went and got some lunch, and we did the Patreon hangout. My wife took my daughter, went and did some stuff. And then when I got home, it was a little bit later in the evening when we were talking. And I'm like, yeah, so what are you going to do tomorrow when I'm going to record? She's like, oh, yeah, I have another day off. Because she had done so much in one day, it felt like it had been both of her days off.
Yeah.
Has that ever happened to you where you're like, God, I got to go back to work tomorrow. Oh wait, it's only Saturday. I still have Sunday tomorrow because you work 4/10s. You have a 3-day weekend, right?
Yeah. 4-day this week. Because the 4th. 4 days this week because the 4th. We get Monday off because the 4th is on a Sunday.
4-day weekend.
Yeah, because the 4th is Sunday, so it's a paid holiday for us.
Yeah, so you get they give you the extra day.
They're paying us for it on Monday, so we get Monday off. So yeah, 4-day weekend this week. So yeah, it's actually happened to me this weekend a few times where I've been like, God damn, like this weekend's just like drawn away, and I'm like, oh wait, no, never mind, I don't have to go to work Monday.
Yeah, I got an extra day.
Yeah,
but it's funny. Just me and my wife have had that happen where like we've been busy on Friday because we have Friday, Saturdays off. Where we've been busy all day Friday, get up and do this. Okay, then we got to go do this. Then we got to go do this. Then we got to go to my parents' house. Then I got to record with Dad. And after that, we're going to go to dinner. And then we get home, and it's 8 o'clock on Friday. We're like, oh, my gosh, we're just so beat. I can't believe both of our days are gone. And then it's like, oh, wait, we still have tomorrow, Yeah. So it's just that's what I'm picturing is that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, indeed. So what do you got next here?
A little bit later on, he's looking around and he said he's going over like, was it real, was it not, and everything like that. And then he remembers and he says, "And faces," he muttered. The memory made him look around apprehensively. He saw no faces. The pile of bricks were just pile of bricks, and the tangle of weeds were just tangles of weeds. There was no faces, but they were here. It wasn't your imagination. He believed that. He couldn't capture the essence of the memory, its quality of beauty and transcendence, but it seemed perfectly real. It was just that his memory of those moments before he had passed out seemed like photographs taken on the best day of your life. You can remember what that day was like, sort of anyways, but the pictures are flat and powerless. So it's an interesting thing because I resonate with this a lot because it's like, whenever someone tells me a story or I look at pictures, it's like, oh, yeah, I remember that trip to Disneyland.
Yeah.
Like, I remember taking my daughter to Disneyland for her 5th birthday. I remember that we had a ton of fun. Do I remember, like, the smell? I'm not one of those people that's like, I remember the smell of Disneyland? Like the churros and the popcorn and, the rides and everything like that and the sounds? No, I'm not one of those kind of people.
Yeah.
So this resonates really, really deep with me here. It's like, wait, I I know I saw faces here is what Jake's doing.
Yeah, he's kind of freaking out a little bit here because he's woken up, and I love one thing just before your note. It said it says he groped for that something like an old man groping his way across a shadowy room. I just think that because he's something happened there, and like the thing I was laughing at earlier, like there was a transition there, and then that transition, like he's not fully cognizant of what happened in that time, so now he's trying to piece it together. And I do love that line too. You can remember what that day was like, sort of, anyways, but the pictures are flat and almost always powerless. I love that too, because there is a disconnect, and that's like what I've heard is you don't. Sorry, I didn't realize we still had the key up on the slide. But it's one of those things. Like when it comes to like people having memories that aren't true, because I basically heard what it is like every time you go back to a memory, you're not actually going back to the actual thing. You're going back to the last time you remembered it. So that's how
it's a copy of a copy.
Yeah, it's a copy of a copy. So eventually it comes to a point where it's like you actually don't remember the truth of it at all. Like you've twisted A to B over the years, and it's like you're remembering B, but A is actually what happened. Like that's the way it works. That's the way like reality is. So
like the game Telephone.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's what happens. And and so it's interesting to me, and I do love that because sometimes you'll look at a picture or something, you remember the vague feel of that, and maybe the joy of that day or whatever, but it's like the picture itself is just it's just there. It's just this flat thing where it's just like it may spark the feeling in you a bit, but like it itself doesn't have that feeling. Like you're just looking at it and you're like, oh, this is just some like really shitty like picture of me in front of like Mickey Mouse or something, and it's like it's not even in like a good exposure or anything. But when you were there at that moment, it was the happiest moment of your 8-year-old life, but when you're looking back on it at 38, you're like, that's me as a kid in front of Mickey Mouse. Like, whoop-de-doo. But it's funny that you mentioned that, like the phone thing. Someone developed a game. I don't know if it was recently, but I was just recently introduced to it. It's called Gartic Phone. It's just like a website you go to play. What it starts off with is a sentence. So, Tad digging a grave, right? That would be the thing. Doesn't sound like something I would do.
The next person gets that prompt, just the words, and they have to draw it in a picture.
Yeah, there's a game I played it before, actually. Yeah.
And then you draw the picture, and then someone else gets that picture and has to do a new prompt off of it, and then it just goes through everyone.
I've played that. You can actually play it with just like a legal pad. Yeah, because you just grab that and you're like, there's like a full on board game that's been made now, where you have like full on like paper. But like the time I played it originally was literally we just used a legal pad, and you just like had a prompt, and then you just folded the paper. One person looked at it, and they drew on a tiny sliver of the paper. And then folded it again, and then like at the end you just unravel that paper, and you can see how
how it progressed is like what you're talking about, like with the memories. It's interesting to see that because like I've done some crazy ones where it's like a vampire got an order of French fries, and it ended up being like a baby being hit by a truck. It's like what?
I can't remember what mine was, but it ended up turning into American History X.
Oh God!
And the last person like used stick figures and drew like the curb checking.
Oh
scene.
God!
It was oh man, and it was like nothing even near that. So that's the only thing I remember, because I remember the picture being like ridiculous. I think I have it in a box somewhere, but that's definitely a fun.
If you ever find that has to be posted.
Yeah, definitely. It does make me laugh. But yes, good call there. Then moving along here, next thing it says, Jake looked around the desolate lot, now filled with the violet shadow of late afternoon, and thought, I want you back. God, I want you back the way that you were. Then he saw the rose growing in its clump of purple grass, very close to the place where he had fallen. His heart leapt in his throat. Jake blundered back towards it, unmindful of the beats of pain each step sent up from his ankle. He dropped to his knees in front of it like a worshiper at an altar. He leaned forward, eyes wide. So again, I like this because it's basically he's trying to reconstruct like what happened, and like he has like vague memories of it, but not full things. So it's just like he's kind of like I think in a way trying to decide, like, angel and demon on his shoulder, like, do it or don't do it. He's, was it real? Was it not real? It's like this, like, dichotomy he's trying to figure out, and like CSI to figure out, like, did something actually happen here, or did something not happen? And then he sees the rose, and obviously he has a pretty strong reaction to it. And I love that kneels down like a worshiper at an altar. That's a lot of fun. It's a fun way to say it there. Okay, so what do you got next?
Right after that, it does a paragraph. I was going to read this whole paragraph, but I'm just going to summarize it. Basically, before, when he was seeing the rose, he saw it in the purple grass.
Yeah.
And this is just going over that it wasn't purple grass after all. It just has paint on it.
Yeah.
That's all it was. Just splatters of paint. Only with your head all messed up the way it was you thought you were seeing. That was bullshit. So the first part that I just read was italicized, which is his internal thing. And then it goes back to normal font. So narrator-ish? I wanted to get your opinion on this.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I still think it's internal monologue, but I think it's like more of like narrative, like in terms of like authoritative. Like I feel like there's like a difference between like you thinking a thought in your head that's like you're talking like, okay, now I'm gonna get up and go down and grab some breakfast, and then I'm gonna like do this, like you're talking to your weight, whatever, and then sometimes it changes. You're like, well, no, you got to
get ready for work,
do this, and like whatever. Yeah, I just think that's how I read it anyway. I can't say that that's right, but that's how I read it, where it's just like one's almost like he's kind of talking to himself, and the other one's like the answer to it. But it's the italicized. I think it's just a way to show you both sides of that conversation. In my mind, that's how I read it. But
I took it as that it was like emphasized that it's putting it back into the normal font was bullshit. That was bullshit.
Yeah,
it was like it's like almost he's like getting a little bit mad at himself, because the next part he says he knew what he had seen then, and what he was seeing now. Camouflage, he whispered. That was all right there. Everything was, and it still is. So he kind of is arguing with himself a little bit. It's one of those things where it's like trying to convince yourself of what you saw.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we've all experienced something like that in our life.
Yeah.
A car crash, or a traumatic event or something like that.
I mean,
or
I feel like
just something even just remotely amazing.
I feel like even like The Simpsons has toyed that at times, where it's just like, or Homer, when the Johnny Cash episode where Johnny Cash is like the wolf.
Yeah, the coyote.
And he's like, oh, it's just the golf course. And he's like, oh, and that was just the gift shop. And it's like this pyramid, and the gift shop's at the top. And like, oh, and the fox is just this stupid dog. Hi, Homer. Like it's just like it's so that's played more comedically, but it's the same idea, right? Like where he's one part of his mind's trying to reconstruct it of like, oh no, never mind, Jake, you didn't see anything. This was just
the rational side of his mind.
Painted grass, and whatever. But the other side of his mind is like, no, like they're like, and I almost feel like it's like brain versus heart. Is what it feels like to me. Like it is like his heart is like something happened, and his brain's like, no, dude, don't, like it's paint on the grass, and like
be real. Be real, man.
Yeah. Which I think works, right? Because he's a smart kid. He's at a pretty prestigious school. Like he's not going to be one that's just like gets caught up in stupid shit. He's going to be one that's going to have the rational side of him that's going to at least argue in his mind. So
well, that's why his rational brain is arguing with his irrational brain. I died. No, I didn't. Look down. You can see me being alive. Like I'm not dead. That's what exactly. This is another manifestation of that. Even though the voices are currently gone. Yeah, is that he knows what he saw, but also part of him is like, no, dude, like that's not what you actually saw. Like look around. There's purple paint. It wasn't purple grass. It was green grass with purple paint on it. Yes, there's a rose, but it's not a rose that opens to you and has the the blazing suns of all existence in there. Yeah. That's like, come on, dude, get real.
Yeah, indeed. And then a little bit further down, it says he looked at a pile of bricks and old broken chunks of plaster and saw a barely discernible face hiding within it. And that's always fun and creepy. It was a face of a woman with a scar on her forehead. Allie, Jake murmured, is your name Allie? There was no answer. The face was gone. He was only looking at an unlovely pile of bricks and plaster again. That's certainly very provocative, because we know an Allie. Well, we knew an Allie. The villain of the story killed her. So
shut up.
And Allie, we remember, had a scar. It was basically said that like she was pretty beautiful except for the scar. Like that was the thing that like it really took away from like her whole look, because it was so kind of like, I just remember it being like a pretty distinct scar. Like it wasn't, there's like minor scars and there's like very heavy scars.
Ones that run across your forehead and down into your face and everything like that. Like
yeah, there's some people that have like, oh, like a little scar, and then there's like Joker.
Yeah.
So
there's someone that we know that has a scar right here on their eyebrow. I don't remember who it is, but you can see like, or maybe it's an actor that I'm thinking.
Because like me, like I'm not like, I always tell people I'd be the worst person to like witness a crime, because I don't recognize, or there's just certain things I just don't pay attention to. Mm-hmm. Like people are like, oh, that person, do they have like brown eyes? And I'm like, no fucking clue.
They have eyes?
I've looked them in the eye, but I have no clue what the colors of their eyes are. Like for instance, I remember even as a kid, and even as an adult, it's like Harrison Ford has a scar, right?
Yeah,
on his face.
On his chin, right here.
And like honestly, I don't know that I ever noticed that until watching Last Crusade, and they quote unquote explain the scar.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh God, he does have a scar. Like I just had never fucking noticed it. So but yes. That's a little tangent there, but when it comes to talking about Allie. But yeah, Allie, that's a pretty big thing, because
that's a callback.
Yeah, big callback, and not something that Jake would be familiar with.
No. Well, he would know about Tolk because Roland told him about it.
Yeah. Do you think he told him, like in detail, like Allie, and she had this scar on her face, and like I spent nights with her, like, or this feels,
she was the bartender.
This feels supernatural to me. Like first time reading it, I remember thinking like, okay, that's not right. There's no way this kid would know about her specifically.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about where he came up with the name Allie, because, I mean, if I saw a face, I'd be like, who are you?
Yeah.
What are you? What's your name? Those would be some of the first questions that would come to my mind, not, hey, is your name Bob?
Me, I'd be like, Captain Howdy?
No. No.
Pazuzu?
No.
Hello there.
Old chum, it's been a while since we've been in hell together. Confirming that Tad is a demon.
It's like, come on in, Pazuzu. Let's have some fun.
That's how you would be with, like, Dracula, wouldn't it be? Ah, Dracula, old buddy, come on in.
Come on in. Let's have a beer.
And he'd be like, I want to suck your blood. You'd be like, you know what happens when you do that? He's like, yeah, I get poisoned because it's not blood. It's the blood. It's the tears of the innocent that I've tortured over the years.
I love the villain you paint me out to being.
There's a reason you have a shirt made after you.
It's quite humorous. So what do you got next?
So he goes back. He's talking to the rose. He says, "You are very beautiful," he said, and once more stretched his hand out to touch it. Although there was no breeze, the rose nodded toward him. For just a moment, the pads of his fingers touched its surface, smooth and velvety, and marvelously alive. And all around him, the voices of the choir seemed to swell. "Are you sick, Rose?"
That's a little crazy for Jake there, talking to the rose. That's all I'm saying here. He's
well, after what he just saw, this is one of those moments where it's like, did I just witness this? Like, did that really just happen? And then you go like, look at something, and you're like, you go to touch it, and it moves towards you.
Yeah, with no breeze, that's definitely that can be seen as creepy depending on how you look at things. But yeah, and then the next thing it says there was no answer. So, not that I would expect one, but yes. And then it goes down a little bit further here. It says he remained on his hands and knees a little longer, and then realized he could stay here looking at the rose for the rest of the afternoon, and then in parentheses says, or maybe the rest of his life, and still not come any closer to solving its mysteries. He had seen it plain for a moment, as he had seen everything else in this forgotten, trash-littered corner of the city. He had seen it with its mask off and its camouflage tossed aside. He wanted to see that again, but wanting would not make it so. It was time to go home. So I think that's kind of... I like that because it's just kind of him synopsizing everything that just happened there. He's seeing like stuff that like could be rationalization. Like he's ultimately come to the conclusion that it's all camouflage to, like, I don't know, like if someone were to catch a glimpse in some way, like they could just rationally do away with it and just forget about it. So he kind of sees it all there. But I love that he ultimately comes to this conclusion that, something did happen here. He saw something. He saw it plain for a moment. It took its mask off essentially for him. And he wanted to see it again, but there's no way he could, that he'd be certain of it. So he has to go home. So I just love that. It just kind of synopsizes everything in a pretty succinct way. And it also shows you what that struggle in his mind, like in my mind, I think of it, his heart versus mind. That's kind of the solution to it, is like he kind of merges it together where it's just like he knows something happened and the rest of this is camouflage. So he's kind of trusting his heart more than his mind.
Yeah.
And that's how not that King's even necessarily saying heart versus mind. That's something I'm definitely putting into it. But that's kind of how I read it.
Yeah.
Let's see. What do you got next?
So he's heading towards the fence that he climbed over to get into this vacant lot. He had reached it and was preparing to scramble over the top when a terrible thought suddenly seized his mind. The rose. What if somebody comes in here and picks it? A little moan of horror escaped him. He turned back, and after a moment his eyes picked it out. Although it was deep in the shadow of a neighboring building now, a tiny pink shape in the dimness, vulnerable, beautiful, and alone. I can't leave it. I have to guard it. But a voice spoke up in his mind, a voice that was surely that of the man he had met at the way station in that strange other life. No one will pick it. Nor will any vandal crush it beneath his heel, because his dull eyes cannot abide the sight of its beauty. That is not the danger. It can protect itself from such things as those. A sense of deep relief swept through Jake. Okay, so now we're getting like, okay, it can protect itself. Like the rose is not just a thing, not just a plant. It's like, plants.
It gives it more sentience.
More sentient. Yeah, exactly. It can protect itself from such things as those. But then also, I remember reading this, and the reason why I really wanted to highlight this part here is that it can protect itself from such things as those. But Jake's sense of terror and dread for the rose and the wrongness that he's feeling, that's something different, is what the voice here is saying.
Yeah, it's not that it can protect itself against anything. It's that it
just can minor threats.
Yeah.
Oh, vandals and people would come and pick me up. Yes, I can protect myself from that.
Yeah.
X, Y, and Z that are really, 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 really bad things. No, I cannot.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, but what are those X, Y, and Z things?
Yeah. And I love Roland, internal dialogue for him. We've seen that with Roland. He's heard the voice of both his father in court. I'm trying to think of some others. Eddie's heard his brother's voice. So to see Jake on this other side hearing Roland's voice is definitely interesting, something that we've seen throughout the series a bit. And then I remember at this point, this little section here actually is what kind of changed me on things, because I think I actually felt the fear at the same time with him. Like when I read that, I'm like, yeah, like there's something's up here. Something's important. And I remember thinking, like, once I read it, I'm like, yeah, I'm thinking the same thing. Like, dude, this is just a fucking rose in a lot. Like anyone can, come in and pick it. Like anyone could, like, just all the same stresses he's having. I'm like, this seems a little important to just like not. I remember having some of the same fears. So the fact that we get Roland's voice to kind of assuage those fears is nice, because I remember this being kind of a shifting point for me, where it's like, okay, maybe the rose is the thing that's creating. Because I remember I was saying earlier, I thought it was just another one of the cookie crumbs on the way to whatever we were going towards.
Exactly.
But at this point now, I've understood the first time reading that, okay, no, this is what we were heading towards. All the other stuff was just, small steps towards it. But this was ultimately the goal we were moving towards. And yeah, that now it seems like a thing. It seems very fragile, just a flower in a vacant lot. That doesn't seem like something that's necessarily the most secure and safe thing.
Yeah.
So, that's definitely a good note there. A little bit further down, it says traffic on the avenue, both pedestrian and vehicular, was much heavier now that people were making their way home for the night. A few passersby looked at the dirty boy in the torn blazer and untucked, flapping shirt as he jumped awkwardly down from the fence, but not many. New Yorkers are used to the sight of people doing peculiar things. I love that, because that's and I don't even know if that's true or not necessarily.
Yep.
But it's one of those things that's certainly something that gets portrayed a lot in film and television and stuff. The fact that New Yorkers just, one, don't give a shit about you, two, they won't pay attention to you. Like there's just this whole and I don't know if it's full on reality or not, but it's certainly something that is conveyed to us in popular culture, that New Yorkers don't give a fuck, and they're not gonna it's gonna take a lot for them to actually
I mean, there's documented cases of it though. So like, I was watching we were talking about this yesterday when we were having lunch. The Son of Sam documentary covered the woman famously who was stabbed to death in New York City in front of people. Like, people looked out their window, saw it happening, and just closed their blinds and stuff like that.
Yeah,
that's how it is in New York. It's like famously, like, didn't they create a law that prevented people from just like, well, not my pig, not my farm kind of thing?
I don't know.
I thought there was something that was created for that. Not necessarily like the Seinfeld thing that we talked about yesterday.
Yes,
as well.
Yeah, the Good Samaritan law in Seinfeld is all. I
think there's something that like if you see someone being like physically assaulted, like you have to you have to at least call the authorities. You don't have to intervene in the situation, but you have to at least, report it. Like, you can't just, like, ignore that.
Yeah.
Because that's what happened is I remember them talking about that, is that literally a woman was stabbed to death in broad daylight on a sidewalk in New York City. 30-something witnesses, and no one called the cops. No one did. And she just bled out there.
Yeah. Yeah, indeed. Okay, so next up, what do you got here? Looks like toward the end of this.
Getting ready to leave. He glanced at the board fence. No, he'd already left. He went over the fence. He glanced at the board fence, and the verse of spray-painted doggerel,
yeah,
seemed to leap out at him. Perhaps because the paint was the same color as the rose. See the turtle of enormous girth, Jake muttered. On his shell he holds the earth. He shivered. What a day. Boy. He turned and began to limp slowly in the direction of home.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely quite the adventure there.
And we've seen that poem with the turtle randomly in the wild once.
Yes, indeed.
Do you remember that?
Yeah. I found a picture of it not too long ago.
It comes up on my my memory app, Time Hop, that I have.
Yeah.
It pops up every now and then where I posted it on Facebook. We went to a pizza place here in Utah called The Pie, and they let people draw on the bricks there.
Yeah.
And there was someone who had a picture of a turtle, and it was the poem, the rhyme.
Yeah, indeed. And it's a fun thing to see in the wild, too. It's kind of like I was reading something, I can't remember if it was Twitter or Reddit recently, where somebody saw like a car with a bunch of Dark Tower things on it, and then went into like the gas station, and it turned out like the attendant there was a Dark Tower fanatic. It's just rare. Like, cool, you can't swing a bag of dead cats without hitting a Star Wars fan or a Marvel fan, but Dark Tower, like,
it's not very often.
you don't find a lot of Dark Tower fans.
There was one.
You'd find a nickel for every time someone told us that we were one of the first outlets they found because they don't know anyone that's read the Dark Tower. I'd have a shitload of nickels.
Yeah, we'd have a shit ton of nickels. There was one that said a year ago, I think is what it was. I freaked out, but I couldn't get a picture of it because I was driving. I passed a car on a highway, and then I slowed down to make sure that I looked at the license plate correctly, and that it said Palaver and then DT. I think it's something like that. Like, it left the vowels out for Palaver, and then it had the letters DT at the end of it, and then it had a kind of like the spire on your shirt, not our design obviously, but like a tower decal.
Oh.
And I'm like, holy shit, that's a fucking Tower fan. Like, holy shit. Like, I tried to, like, I slowed down, saw their license plate, saw the decal, and then they, like, changed lanes, and I was going right, they were going left, and I was like, damn it, I never got a picture of that. But, like, yeah, seeing one in the wild is very rare.
Yeah, that doesn't happen a lot. Okay, so jumping over to subchapter 19, basically right at the start here, I love the first sentence. I didn't necessarily fully highlight it, but I like it. The doorman must have buzzed up as soon as Jake entered because his father was standing outside the elevator when it opened on the 5th floor. So I got a little narc there on the doorman.
Narc.
But then a little bit further down here, it says, without giving Jake a chance to answer, he dragged him through the apartment door because he basically asked where he had been.
Where he'd been.
Your mom's worried. Jake saw Greta Shaw standing at the archway between the dining room and the kitchen. She gave him a look of guarded sympathy, then disappeared before the eyes of the mister could chance upon her. So I love this because, like, there's no care here. Dad's just mad. Dad's angry. Dad's not looking for answers, and he actually gets sympathy from Greta. It just, I don't know. We've talked a lot about how much King shits on poor little Jake and his whole situation, and this just definitely brings it back a little bit to realizing that, most
of my notes here are in that vein.
Yeah, definitely. Poor kid is definitely.
Yeah, even my next note, just like Jake's mother was sitting in her rocker. She got to her feet when she saw Jake, but she did not leap to her feet. Neither did she pelt across the foyer so she could cover him with kisses and
invective.
I honestly think I skip that word every single time I read it. Invective. As she came toward him, Jake assessed her eyes and guessed she had had at least 3 Valiums since noon, maybe 4. Both of his parents were firm believers in better living through chemistry. But that just goes to show, like, I can't remember what cop procedural I was watching, but there was one where they found out that the mother did it, and when they asked, like, how did you, like, first suspect her, it's like, well, when we first told her that her daughter was going to wake up, her first reaction was shit, instead of, like, oh, thank God, or, relief. It was like, well, I think it was actually like, this is going to cost me an arm and a leg.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that's not just a shitty parent, but also raises some questions like, okay, well, how did your kid end up in this situation?
Yeah.
But this right here, like, she didn't jump. She didn't leap to her feet.
Yeah.
I can tell you right now, if my kid had been missing for majority of a day, if she just disappeared from school, and then she just showed up at home, I'd be flying across that apartment to get to her. Like, I would be
Plus, in pretty bad shape in terms of ripped up clothes.
Oh, yeah.
Untucked, got some blood on the face. Like, definitely not. It's not like he's just coming in, just as mint as he was walking out in the morning. So yeah, there's definitely a lot there. There is one of the heartbreaking things for me is that line. Both of his parents were firm believers in better living through chemistry. It's easy to laugh at that, but the fact that not only one is that reality, that's not that sad necessarily, like whatever, but the fact that he knows this, he's 11. He's not the age that he should be dealing with knowing that, like, his parents are both junkies, basically.
Yeah, he predicts how many Valiums she's had since noon.
Yeah.
Not on the day, since noon. That's less than probably 6 hours ago.
And the fact that he knows what the variance might be there.
Yeah.
Like, he knows the difference between what 2 Valium or 1 Valium or 4 Valium looks like. Like, so that just shows that he's deeply aware and familiar with this whole.
This isn't a new development.
No.
This is something that he's lived with for his entire life.
It's easy for us to laugh at that line, but I actually find it kind of heartbreaking because a kid that age shouldn't have to worry about or know or deal with that kind of fact that his parents both have kind of these issues here.
Well, I had this marked. I'm going to read this next paragraph. I had this marked, but then I took it out because I thought it might be too long. But since we're on the subject, this is what we're talking about. You're bleeding. Where have you been? She made this inquiry in her cultured Vassar voice, pronouncing Ben as so it rhymed with scene. So where have you been? Where have you been? She might have been greeting an acquaintance who had been involved in a minor traffic accident. So there's the visual for you. There's what you can picture in your head and hear it in your ears, is that you're hosting a party. One of your friends is late. One of your acquaintances, not even your friend, one of your acquaintances is late.
Yeah.
And, oh, where have you been?
Yeah.
Oh, we were in a minor traffic accident on the way over here. We got rear-ended, darling. But this is her fucking son.
Yeah.
This is her only child.
Yeah.
Like you said, walking into the apartment bloody and dirty and like, oh my God, my kid fell down yesterday and scraped her knee.
Yeah.
Okay. I went down apartment living, went downstairs, started walking across like the middle complex area to see how bad it was, because another kid came and got us. Okay, if another kid came and got us and my kid didn't come home, this must be pretty bad. I'm kind of hurrying and everything like that. I mean, obviously she's not dead and she's not missing, but there she is walking across the complex, holding like a napkin to her knee that's bleeding and everything like that. And I'm like, oh, kid, what happened? That's my first thought, is like, what happened? Are you okay? Not, you're bleeding. Where have you been?
Me, I would have been like, you're bleeding.
Shit.
Rub some dirt on it.
The funny thing was is she didn't even cry. She was like, can I get a Band-Aid and keep playing? I'm like, yeah, that's my kid.
Yeah, I mean, that's
my kid.
Kids are resilient. They bounce back.
God, I watch some kids, dude, on playgrounds, and I'm just like...
Oh, because the thing is like, when we were kids, you don't think about it. It's not even a big deal. But as an adult now, because if we were to fall in that fashion, it would be... something that would hurt us for a week or more. So like when we watch kids, I think we put ourselves in that, where it's just like, that would kill me. And then you're like, oh, the kid just gets back up and keeps playing, like,
laughing.
It just
it's like what the hell?
It just doesn't make sense. But we did the same things, right? Like it's weird how age affects you that way.
Yeah.
Then it goes on here a little bit further down. It says, to this point in his life, Jake had been aware of only 3 feelings about his father: puzzlement, fear, and a species of weak, confused love. Now a 4th and 5th surfaced. One was anger and the other was disgust. Mixed in with these unpleasant feelings was a sense of homesickness. It was the largest thing inside him right now, weaving through everything else like smoke. He looked at his father's flushed cheeks and screaming haircut and wished he was back in the vacant lot looking at the rows and listening to the choir. This is not my place, he thought. Not anymore. I have work to do. If only I knew what it was. So just kind of interesting, again, poor kid, right? It's just puts you in this spot where it's like we've already kind of got a lot of visuals of what these relationships he has with his parents. I think of like the homework early on with Greta, like she was the one that would care to see it, no one else. Like, so this isn't necessarily new, but just to kind of get that breakdown of emotionally how he feels about his dad it's
heartbreaking.
It's a bummer. Yeah, it's definitely a bummer.
Yeah. And even more so, like in this next paragraph, I wanted to highlight something here. Let go of me, he said. What did you say to me? His father's blue eyes widened. They were very bloodshot tonight. Jake guessed he had been dipping heavily into his supply of magic powder, and that probably made this a bad time to cross him. But Jake realized he intended to cross him just the same. He would not be shaken like a mouse in the jaws of a sadistic tomcat. Not tonight. Maybe not ever again. He suddenly realized that a large part of his anger stemmed from one simple fact. He could not talk to them about what had happened. What was still happening. They had closed all the doors. That I wanted to highlight that part, especially that they had closed all the doors, because at 11 years old, he's not responsible for those doors.
Yeah.
Like, if you're a parent, you need to make yourself accessible to your kids. Like, obviously you don't have kids, but I do. One of the things I always tell my daughter, and I bring it up constantly with her, and she's probably sick of hearing it, is that, hey, if you need to talk to me about something, it needs to be your mother, come talk to us.
Yeah.
Like, come talk to us. Don't ever make it seem like you have to keep something to yourself, especially if someone tells you to keep it to yourself. Like, we want to know about those instances.
I remember my parents telling me that, like, in high school and stuff, it's like, if you ever go somewhere and you end up drinking, like, call us. We'll pick you up.
Yep.
Like,
that's going to be me and my wife. We've already talked about it. We agreed on it very early on when we had our daughter, is that, it's not going to be those parents where my kid's afraid to call me for help.
Yeah.
I don't want to be that. And that's what this is exemplifying here. And it breaks my heart because, like, I didn't have to worry about that as much with my family growing up, in such a religious home and everything like that. But if I ever had to, like, I mean, there was instances where I was stranded and I needed help. My car broke down or something like that.
Yeah.
I could call my parents.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Jake can't even talk to his parents about what he's feeling.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely see that, but I do think some of that, like, he can't talk to them about what happened. I do think I can kind of see that, though, as not as tragic, because this is like supernatural shit. Like, this is like your classic, like, I can't, like, talk to my mom. She's not going to believe me that Chucky's coming alive and trying to kill me. Like, there's just an element of, like, and he's worse because Jake's also older. I think Andy in Toy Story is probably like 5-6 years old. Like, he's damn near double that age. So I think for him,
Andy in Toy Story
or Child's Play, it's the same kids, just different. Different.
I never put that together. The kid's name in Child's Play is Andy, and then the kid's name in Toy Story is Andy.
Yeah.
Oh shit!
But I think
same universe.
But I guess I kind of read that as less tragic because it's more just a fact of, like, it's almost the norm in supernatural stuff where you can't, even if you're an adult, you can't talk to people because it's like you're either going to be perceived as crazy or no one's going to believe you, or in Jake's case, like, you could be institutionalized.
He's already talked about that several times, and like with himself and worried about it is that they're going to lock him up. And here comes the men with the white coats, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
What size straitjacket do you wear, kind of thing.
Yeah.
A perfect example of what you're talking about. I just got to the part in it where Bill's talking to everyone except Mike, like the group itself except for Mike, before the apocalyptic rock fight, and he's like, what about if we go to your parents, Richie?
Yeah.
Like, your parents seem like the most ground, and he's like, nah, I'd end up in the funny farm if I tried to convince them that there's a creature living under the town killing kids.
Yeah, eating children. Yeah.
It's that what that you're talking about.
And
it's that whenever kids encounter something supernatural,
and
there's always that disconnect that we can't go to the parents. They're not going to believe us.
Yeah, and it is worse with kids, but it happens with adults too, where sometimes adults are put into a situation where they're experiencing something and like they can't tell anyone because no one's going to believe them. Like you've got like that identity, the idea of who you are as a self, and you don't want that upset by the fact of telling people things that they're going to perceive. Oh no, he just lost his mind. So I don't know. There is some like idea, and I would certainly say that what you're reading there in terms of like not being able to talk to his parents about certain things, like I think that's probably also true. With everything we've learned about these people so far, I think that's equally true. That's not how I didn't read it from this. I've read that from the rest of the picture, where it's just like, say he's like just none of this is happening and he's just stressed about finals, which we're going to get to here in a bit, where that's what it's perceived as. Like even if that were the case and nothing else was going on, Jake was just a normal fucking kid. He was worried about things. He couldn't talk to his parents about that.
No, and that's what it's saying here. It didn't close the door on this subject. They had closed all the doors.
Yeah.
And that's what I was going to say. They had closed all the doors. There is no talking to his mom and dad about any kind of a problem.
Yeah.
Whatsoever. If he had a problem with another kid bullying him at school, he could not go to his parents.
Yeah.
If he had a problem with having his first crush and not knowing how to handle it, he could not go to his parents.
Yeah.
Hell, you brought up another example. Hey, look, I got a fucking A+ on my math test that I was really worried about.
Yeah.
He doesn't show that to his parents.
Yeah.
He shows it to the fucking housekeeper.
Yeah.
Like the what is she? She's not the maid. What is she? Is she just a housekeeper? Is that what it?
Yeah, I'm not sure the exact title they give her there, but isn't we get the idea that she's the only one that calls him Jake too? Was that in book one?
No, she calls him Bama.
Or Jake. She's the only one that will call him Jake too. Everyone else calls him John because he's John Chambers.
Jake Chambers, or to his father, the boy.
Yeah. So like there's whether it's Bama or whether it's Jake, there's a difference there. Like it's like with the relationship he has with her is different than what he has with his parents. It's better, like in a lot of ways.
Yeah. If a kid goes by a nickname and the parents won't call him by that nickname, there's a disconnect between the two.
Yeah, definitely.
That's yes, Jennifer here is the Jennifer. Oh, she's always had me call her Jenny. It's like, ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah. So then a little bit further down here, it says, sudden strength seemed to flow back into Jake. He sees a hand clasped on his arm just below the shoulder and shoved it violently away. His father's mouth dropped open. I don't work for you, Jake said. I'm your son, remember? If you forgot, check the picture on your desk. So definitely kind of an outburst that feels new, especially because the way his dad reacts there. I don't think this is because I don't think the dad would react if this were a normal outburst. Like if Jake's disposition were to be kind of the hell child for his parents because they deserve it kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like there wouldn't be this reaction, but certainly the reaction that we got before and even here after with this, this isn't normal. Jake's he's going a different route here than normal. So then there's an argument back and forth here.
Real fast, before you go any further, I want to emphasize something. What Jake said there, I don't work for you. I am your son. It's italicized, so he emphasizes that. And this is something that I think was, if I remember right, I think this was brought up earlier in this book, that Chambers here, not Jake, but his dad,
Elmer.
I couldn't remember his name for a second. Elmer seriously does not consider Jake like a son. He's just another
thing that he manages.
I don't want to say henchman, pawn.
Yeah.
On his board of chess, kind of thing. So that's why Jake's insult here is like his snap back at his father is that, I'm your son, remember? Like, hey, shithead. This isn't how you treat your children. This isn't how you should be treating your son.
Yeah. Yeah, indeed. So then what do you got next here?
Like you said, they were having an argument back and forth. Jake's mother does the stop it, both of you, and everything. Jake's father reached for Jake's arm again, then changed his mind. The surprising force with which his son had torn his hand away a moment ago might have had something to do with it. Or perhaps it was only the look in Jake's eyes.
Yeah. So, yeah,
he's a psycho.
Yeah, he's definitely got some intensity in his eyes in this whole thing, which is interesting because I don't think that we've got the impression that was ever something that he would have had with his parents.
Yeah.
So I think this is definitely new, and yeah, it's obviously everything he's been experiencing, not even just what just happened to him, but what's been happening to him for weeks now, is probably kind of pushing him to a limit, to a point where it's causing him to act differently than he normally would. And then going down a little bit further here, again, kind of shouting back and forth. It's going back and forth, and then Dad says, "Don't walk away from me." And then he's going after him. It says his father saw those blazing eyes and stepped away. The rage on his face was doused by something that looked like terror. That blaze was not metaphorical. Jake's eyes actually seemed to be on fire. His mother, which I actually got to stop and say, I love that because King uses blazing eyes a lot. Maybe not as much as blue chambray shirts, but it is and I don't necessarily dislike it because I actually think it's a very good way to convey maybe the way someone's eyes are, blazing, I guess.
Yeah.
But the fact that he changes it up a little bit here to say the blaze was not metaphorical. Jake's eyes actually seem to be on fire. Like, that's interesting because it kind of calls this out separate from everything else we've heard King every time King's used that similar thing about eyes blazing. Roland's had that a few times already in this series. His mother gave voice to the strengthless little scream, clapped one hand to her mouth, took 2 large stumbling steps backwards, and dropped into a rocking chair with a small thud. "Leave me alone," Jake said. And then his dad asked, "What happened to you?" So, again, very, very different kid than what we've been conveyed to in this with this whole chapter, basically, right? Or are we in a... or is it the second book actually is titled Jake? So we're, basically this whole thing we've been kind of unraveling kind of what Jake's life looks like, and this is certainly not what fits into what we've seen so far. Okay, so what do you got next?
So right at the end of, so you started it. His father asked, "What's happened to you?" At the end of his, he goes on a little bit more about skipping out school and exams and everything like that. And he says, "And you act as if you've gone crazy." Well, there it was. You act as if you've gone crazy. What he'd been afraid of ever since the voices started 3 weeks ago. So there we got a time frame for how long this has been going on for him. 3 weeks. The dread accusation only, now that it was out. Jake found it didn't frighten him much at all, perhaps because he had finally put the issue to rest in his own mind. Yes, something had happened to him. Was still happening. But no, he had not gone crazy. At least not yet. So there's a turn for Jake there. That's solid character development from Stephen King to a character in one paragraph.
Yeah.
I feel like Jake just went through more character development than any character in Twilight. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to shit on Twilight. I just tease because my wife used to like those books.
and it's cool because like we built it up earlier in this section. What, not necessarily this episode, but this whole Jake section that we've been in is he's been terrified of the fact that he is going mad and that what that is going to mean for him. So this is like kind of the shoe finally dropping, at least in his mind. Although obviously his parents aren't actually accusing him of that in a way that
it's not a direct like, "Oh my God, you have gone crazy, haven't you?" It's just like it's almost like a phrase like, "Tad, you're acting crazy, man. Like, what's going on?" And that's what I would say to Tad if he was like, "My gosh, dude, this commercial just like made me tear up. Like, I cared so much for those people." And I'm just like, I'd be like,
you'd be like, "Wait, Tad watched a commercial?"
First off, Tad watched a commercial. Second off, Tad having feelings of like pity for another human being. Like, what's going on here? Like, because we know he doesn't experience those. And this isn't just me talking. Okay, I have to pause for a moment. Tangent. He legit posted about a TV show, the Apple Plus one.
Yeah, Ted Lasso.
Thank you. Call out for Tad here. He posted this on his personal Facebook about how Ted Lasso and everything like that. He's like, "And it's such a good show. It does this and it does this. It'll also tug at your heartstrings and make you tear up." Well, not me. This is a direct quote because I don't have tear ducts. So don't get mad at me when I tease him about this. This is him saying it. I'm just agreeing with him.
Yes, and I do recommend that show, by the way. Yeah, so that's it for the subchapter here that we have notes wise. There's a little bit of a conversation here, and then it ends the subchapter and moves into subchapter 20.
Oh, real fast! I just noticed this. I should have highlighted this. Right after where I just talked, he said he says we'll talk about this in the morning. He had almost reached the hall when his mother's voice, worried, stopped him. Johnny, are you all right? That's what you were talking about. No one calls him Jake except for Greta.
Yeah,
and everything. He's John or Jonathan or not Jonathan, John or Johnny.
Yeah,
to his parents.
Yeah, which that's weird because like it feels like if the kid wanted to use a middle name, I think the only way that would generally be taken like offensive, but to the parents is if they were named after like if it was Junior, like if his dad's name was John. If it was John Chambers and then Jake is the son and it's, I could see him taking a little bit personal because like you've given that kid your name basically type thing. So like maybe, but like the fact that it's just like John versus Jake and like dad's name's Elmer, like I don't get it, I guess. Like,
yeah.
I'm not even necessarily saying it's right. I'm just saying that like I can see it being more of an issue for a parent if like, oh, I named my first son after me, and they want to use their middle name, like maybe having a little bit of a heartburn about that. But like the fact that it's just like this random third name that's like it's not Elmer, it's not. I mean, it's not Jake. It's John. It's like weird.
I don't think that people get like offended by that because the biggest problem is that there's confusion. Hey, Bob. Yes. No, Junior. That's why they call
Junior.
him. That's why they call him something different. I have that in my family because of my father-in-law and his oldest son, my brother-in-law, have the same first name.
Yeah.
So my brother-in-law goes by a different name. He goes by like initials instead of the name. So he's JC and my father-in-law is Glade.
Yeah.
So they're both named Glade. So if we go, hey, Glade, two of them would speak up. So, I mean, I get the wanting to separate yourself a little bit if the name's the same.
Yeah.
Like what you're saying, like this is just some random third name that he goes by.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It's definitely strange, the fact that it's Elmer, I guess. I would have expected with the whole name thing that we got early on, I would have expected Dad's name to be John. But not so. So then jumping into subchapter 20, basically, he's inside of his room now, and he's basically listening through the door, hearing the parents go back and forth a little bit, talking about what's going on, which is just the perfect thing, right? I'm sure every kid's done that at certain points. And like,
how bad is it?
You've grandstand, then you're like listening to like kind of get the casualty report of what things are looking like for you.
What I picture, what I always visualize here and think about this is the reporters in the courtroom where they're writing down what the verdict is and everything like that, and then they're going to run out to the telephones and pick up and call the office because you see that with I mean that was the way it was before like the 70s when we started like videoing and TV being a part of trials, is that it would be the reporters there.
Well, now the reporter would just tweet.
Yeah, they just tweet from their cell phones. But back then, they would seriously write it down, and then there would be a beeline. As it's still wrapping up, you'd have the rush of the reporters out to get to the payphones that are just outside the door.
Yeah.
It's a guilty verdict. Yep, guilty on all charges. To call their news reporting to get it on TV by 6 o'clock.
Yeah. Then a little bit further down it says he said, she said, blah blah blah. Jake still loved them. He was pretty sure he did anyway. But other stuff had happened now, and these things had made it necessary that other things must occur. Why? Because something was wrong with the Rose, and maybe because he wanted to run and play and see his eyes again, as blue as the sky above the way station had been. So again, we're seeing not only the attachment now to the Rose, and Eddie saw something in the fire, right? That was a rose, and he's like maybe not as gaga as Jake is here about it, but he certainly has a draw to it. So it's seeming important, but I do also love the fact that there's part of this desire is also see Roland again. I do like that because I remember thinking to myself reading it the first time, like, what's this kid gonna think? Like Roland let the kid die.
Yeah.
So maybe he's not gonna be too open to the idea of a reunion with Roland in any way. But this is obviously kind of bedded those fears down for me a bit when I was reading it.
Yeah.
The first time. So what do you got next?
There was a light knock at the door, and Jake turned warily in that direction. It's Miss Shaw, John. May I come in for a minute? He smiled. Miss Shaw. Of course it was. His parents had drafted her as an intermediary, or perhaps translator might be a better word.
Yeah.
I was saving this because what you were saying before is like, hey, it's just a kid and you can't really ever go to your parents about this. No, this is what I was going to point out is like, no, like I can tell you right now, I don't draft someone to go and talk to my daughter for me.
Yeah.
Like if I'm having a problem with my kid or something seriously wrong, it's going to be me and my wife together.
Yeah.
Or one of us at least.
Yeah.
It's not going to, even if I had a housekeeper or, someone like Greta in our family.
Yeah.
It would not be her to do this.
Yeah.
Like, this just goes to show what we were talking about. What you realize, like, they closed all the doors.
Yeah.
And that's why they send her to translate what their fucking son is going through.
Yeah, I love also she calls him John because mom and dad are probably listening.
They're listening very tenderly.
Now it's the other side of it. Jake was listening to the door, and now, they're probably standing, just at the end of the hall listening as much as they can. So I love that because we've obviously heard that she doesn't call him John necessarily. So the fact that she calls him that there is, I like. That's just a fun little thing because
I'm gonna keep going just a little bit further. I know I didn't mark it, but you go see him, his mother would have said. He'll tell you what's wrong with him. I'm his mother, and this man with the bloodshot eyes and the running nose is his father, and you're only the housekeeper. But he'll tell you what he wouldn't tell us, because you see more of him than either of us, and maybe you speak his language. Jesus.
And of course
that's sad, dude. That's so heartbreaking.
Yeah, and whether that's true or not, but that is ultimately what Jake's perception is here.
Yeah.
And then it says, she'll have a tray, Jake thought. And when he opened the door, he was smiling. Mrs. Shaw did indeed have a tray. There were 2 sandwiches on it, a wedge of apple pie, and a glass of chocolate milk. She was looking at Jake with mild anxiety, as if she thought he might lunge forward and try to bite her. Jake looked over her shoulder, but there was no sign of his parents. He imagined them sitting in the living room, listening anxiously. So yeah, again, that's why when I saw that she was calling him John, I'm like, that's weird. We've been told repeatedly that she doesn't call him that.
Yeah.
But it's like, oh, I guess if Dad's nearby, you can't really say the wrong name because then you'd get yelled at. So
well, it's just like she waited to see John to make sure that he actually was okay, but then disappeared before the eyes of the master could come on her.
Yeah, exactly.
Or Mister, I think is what it actually said. But
yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
So what do you got next?
A little bit further down. Oh, look at this, she said, picking up Charlie the Choo-Choo. I had this one when I was a little girl. Did you buy this today, Johnny? Yes. Did my parents ask you to find out what I'd been up to? Yeah, that book. Charlie the Choo-Choo.
It's a fun little book here.
I still need to buy it.
I recommend it for all children.
No, Ted, just no. She nodded. No acting, no put on. It was just a chore. Like taking out the trash. You can tell me if you want to, her face said, or you can keep still. I like you, Johnny, but it's really nothing to me. One way or the other, I just work here, and it's already an hour past my regular quitting time. Which I wanted to highlight this part because, like, up until now, you're like, oh, good. At least Jake has Greta. At least he has someone to go to. But then when you get here, here's King doing it again. Like, damn it. Like, here we go. This is still, he still doesn't have someone,
Yeah. Ultimately, she's hired help.
She is, and
I
feel like her face says it.
Yeah,
like she's not going to tell the kid this, but you can always read someone's body language and their facial expression, and that's what he's realizing is that she's still just a housekeeper. She's it's an hour past quitting time. She stayed. Yes, she cares that much.
But
at
did
the end
she
of the
stay at her
day-
own behest though, or was she told to stay, or did she
there you
feel
go.
obligated to stay because the kid's
It's
missing?
it's the job.
Yeah.
I have to be there in case if they have needs.
Yeah.
Normally I'm there. I make dinner. I go home.
Yeah, but now it's like
We have a situation.
Yeah, there's a situation. I think what I find with this is kind of like the classic scene of like the guy that is like has a fledgling relationship with the hooker, like he's falling in love with the hooker, but it's like ultimately you're just paying her. She doesn't care about you.
Yeah.
Like that's been done in 100 different movies, 100 different TV shows.
Taxi Driver.
Yeah, just in general, it happens all the time because it's just like, and I'm sure it probably really happens where people actually believe that there's some connection. And I just feel this is the same thing. Like this is a hired person that, that there is like maybe the perception, like she's paid to, it's like waitresses too, right? Like how many people like that are, especially like that get mixed up. Like, oh, I think this waitress might like me. It's like maybe they just work for tips.
Dude,
So,
I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. I saw a Facebook post that was 50 awkward text messages, and one of them was.
Oh, and you actually read it.
I actually went through and read it. Dude, it was hard. You know me.
I mean, you just almost covered your face there. Just
there was one.
So.
There was one where it's like, "Hey, is this so and so?" Because like it crosses out the names. It's like, "Yeah, it is. I'm sorry. Who's this?" It's like, "I'm your cashier. I hope you don't find this creepy, but I thought you were really pretty. Do you want to go out sometime?" And then it was like a couple minutes later, "Thanks. I just got fired." I was like, "Oh my god! Oh no! Ah, it's so creepy and wrong."
Oh man, it's not Scott's Tots, but it'll do.
I forgot how much enjoyment you get out of me being like that.
Oh, dude,
discomfort. What
yeah.
I'm embarrassed for him.
Yeah, like, because like I came to a conclusion recently that because like there's you and there's Hayden, and I've come to a conclusion that you guys both hate horror, just different kinds of horror. He hates like Conjuring, Exorcist type horror because he like gets into it and like feels for people. You hate horror of awkwardness, which is similar, like
social horror.
If you look at the way that like awkwardness happens, it plays exactly like a horror movie.
Yeah,
like you drag it out, you make it like you build the tension. You like Scott's Tots, like that is all about the tension of early on in that episode that he has to tell the kids that he does have money for their college. So the whole episode you're stewing in it, waiting for that conversation to happen. So it's really the same thing. And it's like, so my two of my friends there, Hayden hates one horror, Peter hates the other horror, and it's really the same like anatomy. It's just different like executions on that. And yeah, you absolutely
social horror. That's what I'm calling it from now on. The not dealing with awkward situations.
How much to watch Scott's Tots with me?
How much?
Yeah.
Buy me lunch? I mean, it's The Office. I mean, you're not going to like...
But you skipped that episode. I know you skipped that episode.
No, I watched it.
No, you skip it now, though, on rewatches.
I haven't rewatched The Office since then.
If you
did... Every time I've watched The Office, I always watch it. The last two times I've watched it, I've texted you when I'm watching it.
Man.
Just so you could be chuckling.
All right, what do you got next? Tangent there, but...
So, wait, is it me or is it you?
You. I just did the tray.
No, she did the Charlie the Choo-Choo.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was like, wait a minute, because you held up the book and everything.
Oh, yeah. So I'm sorry. So mine is I'm losing my mind here. We all go a little mad sometimes.
Tad got distracted about the joy of that comes to his heart whenever he brings up Scott's Tots to me,
or the dinner party.
Oh God.
So then they're talking there. It mentions Jake picking up his bologna and cheese sandwich, his favorite. He mentions the fact that she knows his favorites and his mom doesn't. So once again, adding to it. Then he kind of gives her the story about he's kind of stressed about school, studying, and that kind of stuff. And then we get to my note here. It says, "I think I'll be okay now. I might have to redo my final essay in English, but." "Oh," Mrs. Shaw said, a startled look across her face. She put Charlie the Choo-Choo back down on Jake's desk. "I almost forgot. Your French teacher left something for you. I'll just get it." So cutting him off there.
Yeah.
Because again, I think maybe we lost sight a little bit of the fact of the essay, right?
With everything that drove him out of school.
Yeah, with everything that's happened, it's kind of easy to lose sight of the fact of that. But yes, now he mentions that, and she remembers. Oh yeah, your French teacher dropped something by. So
and yeah, my next note is right after where you left off. As she left the room, Jake hoped he hadn't worried Mr. Bassetti, who was a pretty good guy, but he supposed he must have, since Bassetti had actually made a personal appearance. Jake had an idea that personal appearances were pretty rare for Piper's school teachers. He wondered what Miss Bassetti had left. His best guess was an invitation to talk with Miss Hotchkiss, the school shrink. That would have scared him this morning, but not tonight. Tonight, only the rose seemed to matter.
Yeah. So, yeah. They definitely start to worry. Yeah, it's I can't think. I mean, I never went to a Piper school type thing.
Yeah.
But I only had a teacher ever come to my house one time, and it's when I was whatever grade I was. I got pneumonia, and I was out for a week because I was in the hospital.
Oh, really?
So I remember when the day I got out, my teacher had showed up to the house to like drop off some cards that all the kids made and like see what was up or whatever.
How old were you?
I think that was 4th grade. I think.
So what is that, 8, 9?
Something.
Somewhere around there?
Yeah. Definitely didn't tell you. They didn't tell me then, but when you look back and realize, oh, yeah, that still could have been fatal. Like at that age, like
oh damn,
pneumonia is not laughing matter for kids.
People die of pneumonia.
Yeah,
still.
if it's kids or like elderly, you don't want pneumonia. So
or people with really bad health complications, not even really bad, just minor health complications. You get pneumonia, it could be. That was my wife had that at one. They were worried about that with her when her hospital stays. They didn't want her to develop pneumonia because yeah. And you were 4th grade, is what you said?
I think so. Yeah.
So let's see, 6th grade is 12, 5th grade 11, 4th grade would have been 10. So you were 10 years old, 9, 10 years old.
Yeah, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the only time I remember having a teacher show up to the house, and that was obviously a pretty outstanding,
extreme circumstance. Yeah.
So
and that's public school. This is private school.
Yeah. These are people that just sit around and chortle and eat caviar. So. So my next note here, a few moments later, Mrs. Shaw came back. She was carrying a very familiar blue folder. Jake found that not all of the dread had left him after all. They would all know by now. Of course, students and faculty alike, and it was too late to do anything about it. But that didn't mean that he liked all of them knowing that he had flipped his lid, that they were talking about him. So now again, getting into that whole like thing I mentioned earlier of like kind of your idea of self. So yeah, he's kind of freaking out a little bit. Then as we go here, there's some more back and forth. She mentions that his dad actually feels for him a bit and says he even remembers having the same things with like finals anxiety and stuff. So and then he remembers and then Jake kind of says he's weird because he never pictured his dad as a kid or couldn't picture him in like in that context.
Well, it even says his father would never been the sort of man to indulge in reminiscences which began with, when I was a kid.
Yeah, exactly.
Which we both have done ourselves here on the show.
Yeah.
It's like, I remember back when I was a kid, I would do this.
Yeah. Yeah. So then what do you got? You got next here is the note from Mr. Bissett.
Exactly. The note from Mr. Bissetti. Dear John. Again, John, not Jake.
Yeah.
Bonnie Avery told me that you left early. She's very concerned about you, and so am I. Although we have both seen this sort of thing before, especially during exam week. Please come and see me first thing tomorrow, okay? Any problems you have can be worked out. If you're feeling pressured by exams, and I want to repeat that it happens all the time, a postponement can be arranged. Our first concern is your welfare. Call me this evening if you like. You can reach me at 555-7661. I'll be up until midnight. Remember that we all like you very much and are on your side.
Yeah, and then he gives a French thing here that I looked it up, and it basically is like to your health. Basically, is what it means. So and then
votre santé.
Yeah, and then it's actually has a drawn out signature here in the book, which I always thought was fun.
Oh yeah,
just the fact because like ultimately like laying that out, you don't just type that, right? Like that's actually got to be like drawn by someone and then put in kind of like the key that we had on the screen earlier. So yeah, definitely an interesting thing there to get that. And it says next up here, it says Jake felt like crying. The concern was stated, and that was wonderful. But there were other things, unstated things in the note that were even more wonderful: warmth, caring, and effort, however misconceived, to understand and to console. So. Yeah, that's
something that he's desperately missing from his life. Because even like we were just talking about with Greta, it's like she's there out of potential, need for her job.
Yeah.
It's not something that she's doing off of her own fruition. Like Jake saw in her face, it's an hour past quitting time. Let's wrap this up, dude.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, come on, I need to go home now.
Yeah.
So, yes.
I made your guys' dinner. Now I got to go home and make my man dinner. Or, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So what do you got next?
By the way, Bonnie asked me to send this along. This is a arrow at the bottom of the note. Jake turned it over and read this. By the way, Bonnie asked me to send this along. Congratulations. Congratulations. What in the hell did that mean? He flipped open the folder. A sheet of paper had been clipped to the first page of his final essay. It was headed from the desk of Bonita Avery. Just picturing that for Piper School. It's like, dang. And Jake read the spiky fountain penned lines with growing amazement.
Yeah. And here is where we will have our first sound clip, and we didn't have one last episode. So we will go ahead and listen to Mr. Frank Muller with this note here. So great, great performance from Mr. Frank Muller there. And I just love this because I really feel like, for one, I remember reading it the first time and being just as like amazed as Jake, because I expected some repercussions and I didn't necessarily expect this to go well for him. So the fact that, seemingly it went very well. So that was a surprise to me. But I do have to say, in reading it, I just feel like this is like King kind of flipping off, certain people, because there's just like, people that like want to get like these deep meanings. And the thing is, it's funny is I always see the same thing with Kubrick, not necessarily literature, but also in film, where sometimes people go so fucking crazy to try to like insert all this deep and, esoteric stuff into these things. And it's like, sometimes maybe it's just, what it is. It is what it is.
Oh,
and
what's
like reading into it and trying to get like all this. So in a way, I feel like this is because that's really what's happening, right? His teacher is drawing all this meaning and importance out of this stuff, and it's like we understand enough of it because some of it is references to stuff we've seen already, Lady of Shadows and stuff like that, and The Prisoner. So
Gunslinger.
Yeah, like there's all this stuff that's like familiar to us. So like it's ridiculous to us as readers that she's taking this stuff out of it, and I just wonder if it's King as an author just being like
he inserts that really heavily in it. There's the part where Bill's having the flashback to one of his college classes.
Yeah.
Where it's, oh, this is the meaning of this, and this is the meaning of this, and Bill stands up and goes,
that's true.
Bill stands up and goes, I don't understand any of this. Can a story just be a story?
Yeah.
Like, and then the teacher's like, I understand. You have much to learn.
Yeah. Chortling, of
well,
course.
he's not really that type. He's like a hippie guy.
Yeah.
It's like,
but,
it's the 60s. But then Bill goes and sells his horror story that the teacher gave him an F and makes money, and the teacher's like, do you think that money proves anything, Denborough? You still have much to learn.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm 100% with King on and Bill Denborough in this, and you in this.
Yeah.
Dude, looking at like the symbolism, what's the symbolism of this story? What does it symbolize? What is the crow in book 1 that's with Zoltan?
Yeah.
What does that symbolize? What does the crow symbol? It's a fucking bird that talks and talks about beans. It's not fucking symbolizing anything, most likely.
And
it's a damn bird.
Certainly there can be symbol, but I just wonder, like, you got to be careful because it's like some people assume there's symbolism in everything. And it's just like sometimes it's to their detriment because it's like, I don't know, like not everything like like an author is going to write or a filmmaker is going to film is all going to have this like deep meaning. Like some of it yes, but all of it no. And I just think some people take it to the extreme where every single thing like Kubrick, I feel like people look at every frame of everything he's ever done and assume that there's like this deep whatever, and it's just like there's that great YouTube video of him where he's like setting up the jack outside the door or inside the door of the freezer where he's like leaning his head against it and the camera's coming up, and like Kubrick just like on the fly is like, let's try something down here, and then like he didn't have this all planned out. He didn't know how that shot was going to look until he did it. So it's like I just think that gives kind of some credence to the idea of like
it just happens.
Sometimes art just happens, and like it doesn't have like this deep meaning that you can like write like 25,000 word essays on. Like I don't know. That's
here's another one for you. Okay, I saw someone post on my Facebook the other day. The Labyrinth, classic movie, right? People are like blown away by some of the stuff in that movie. There's the scene where she goes down and then the hands form and like do talks like with the hands.
Yeah,
like there's not actual people, but it's just like puppeteers and everything like that. Literally, they just came up with that on the fly. Like they show the behind the scenes of like Jim Henson talking with the director while someone's recording. Yeah. And like, well, what if we do this? And they're trying out different ways that their hands can go together to make faces. And they're like, sure, we'll try it. Like, try it. Like, they didn't have this planned out.
Yeah.
They just thought that it sounded cool and they would do it, just like you said with Kubrick.
And I'm sure the same thing happens with writers.
Oh, this sounds really cool. I'm going to do this.
And so for King, I think, like, this is very interesting because he is an author. So it's just like, I'm certain there's things that King has done. There's shit that we've seen already. The Lady of Shadows and The Prisoner. There's times that he's giving us stuff that does have deeper meaning that we later find out what that is.
Yeah.
But, like, so I'm not even necessarily saying that all of King is, like, flat, two-dimensional and there is no deeper meaning, because I do think there is at times, but it's not everything. So I just think like this feels very much to me like King kind of like jabbing people through the way of like, because we all know what Jake's essay, well, we don't necessarily know what it means fully, but we understand where a lot of it's coming from. So to see Miss Avery here just going kind of nuts, trying to analyze it all, it's very clownish, and I just wonder if that's King on purpose, just kind of like dunking on. Because I wonder, even like the Denborough thing, like from it, I really wonder if that's like a real thing that happened to King at some point.
I would not surprise me if it did.
Yeah, it's so very, very cool. I do like that, and
especially since Bill Denborough starts off with a horror writing, where he writes a horror story, gets an F on it, and then sends it off to a magazine and gets published. That's how King started, was publishing stories in men's magazines.
Yeah,
you know, like those kinds of like trashy magazines that had nude pictures and then stories with them.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And I will also pause real quick for the YouTube side. If you're here live, you heard the sound clip from Mr. Frank Muller, but I do have to edit those out for the long-term posting. Otherwise, our video will get taken down for copyright. So that will be slightly abridged if you're listening to it on YouTube later down the road. But if you're on the podcast, you'll hear it. And if you're here live, you would have heard it as well. I just want to point that out. We have a few other sound clips a little bit later. Same deal.
Yep.
So definitely FYI on that. Then next up, it says right after that, it says Jake pulled the sheet off the clip, revealing the title page of his stunningly original and richly symbolic final essay. Written and circled there in red ink of Miss Avery's marking pen was a notation A+. Below this, she had written, "Excellent job." Jake began to laugh. So.
Yeah.
Just and basically the rest of this subchapter, which is actually a good portion of it, is basically Jake laughing maniacally, or not maniacally, but he's like gut bust laughing. He's lost himself. Kind of like, I'm sure he's in pain. Like, I don't think it even conveys that for sure, but we've all had those moments of laughter where you're hurting and maybe you're not even able to like get breath right. Like, you can't breathe properly because you're laughing so hard. Basically, that's what's happening the rest of this way. He tries to explain it to Greta, but can't through all the laughter. And then she gets up and basically leaves, says goodnight, sleep well. And then he, finishing up here, says, "Goodnight, Mrs. Shaw," Jake said, controlling himself with an effort, "and thanks." As soon as she was gone, he began to laugh again. So I do love this for all the shit that King's laid on Jake. Like, it is good to see him laugh, and he does give us quite a bit of it here. So it is good to see the kid happy for sure, especially after everything he'd gone through. But let's jump over to subchapter 21. What do you got here, sir?
Right off the bat, during the next half hour, he had separate visits from both parents. They had indeed calmed down, and the A+ grade on Jake's final essay seemed to calm them further. Jake received them with his French textbook open on the desk before him, but he really hadn't looked at it, nor did he have any intention of looking at it. He was only waiting for them to be gone so he could study the 2 books he had bought earlier that day. He had an idea that the real final exams were still waiting just over the horizon, and he wanted desperately to pass. So putting up a little facade here for Mom and Dad.
Yeah, definitely. And then basically Dad comes in. There's a little bit of back and forth, talking about the day. Are you okay? Kind of mending fences a little bit after the blow up. And then my note here at the tail end is Dad's about to walk out. Elmer is, and Jake says, "Dad." His father turned and looked at him warily. "What's your middle name?" Something in his father's face told him something in his father's face told Jake that he had looked at the final essay grade, but hadn't bothered to read either the paper itself or Mrs. Avery's critique. "I don't have one," he said. "It's just an initial, like Harry S. Truman, except mine's an R. What brought that on?" "Just curious," Jake said. He managed to hold his composure until his father was gone, but as soon as the door was closed, he ran to his bed and stuffed his face in his pillow and muffled out another bout of wild laughter. So, just adding more to it, which obviously, if he didn't know, even if it turned out that his dad's middle name was Roland, like, might make us question things a bit, but I don't think it would mean anything for him because he wouldn't have known. He would have just learned it at this point. So Miss Avery is definitely off the mark there, and Jake finds that hilarious.
Yeah, obviously.
So then let's jump over to subchapter 22. What do you got here?
So when he finally calms down from his another laughing fit, Jake went back to his desk, turned on the study lamp, and opened Charlie the Choo-Choo. He glanced briefly at the copyright page and saw it had originally been published in 1942. His copy was from the 4th printing. He looked at the back, but there was no information at all about Beryl Evans, the book's author. Jake turned back to the beginning, looked at the picture of a grinning, blonde-haired man sitting in the cab of a steam locomotive, considering the proud grin on the man's face, and then began to read.
I will mention, give them credit for this this book here. The title page here, Charlie the Choo-Choo by Beryl Evans, copyright 1942.
Shit, really?
Fourth edition. So they did a damn good job. It does actually add Simon & Schuster books for young readers, New York, London, Toronto, Sydney, New Delhi. But yes, they actually, because that was the first thing when I was reading this, I had to pull this out and look. I'm like, I wonder, because like...
Yeah, I wonder.
Yeah, but no, yeah. And there is no like real copyright page in it. So it's just like part of the title page. So like it's not exact because like usually the copyright page is on the other side. It's like fine print on the left side or whatever. But yeah, definitely pretty cool. Highly recommend this to anyone. It's still available on the Amazons with Charlie the Choo-Choo, especially if you have young kids. Good one to let them read there. Yes. Now let's go ahead on this. What we're gonna do is we wanted to. This is a little bit unusual to have this kind of like this amount of sound clips, but we're actually going to do Frank reading the Charlie the Choo-Choo portion, and then we will cover the stuff in between and kind of talk about it as we go. I just think this stuff is really fun, so let's go ahead.
Especially him doing it is so good.
Yeah, he does a great job. So I even got a slide made for us here. So let me go ahead and let's look at the first one here. I had to give Peter the book he can read along with here, but yes, it's they do a pretty good job of pretty much conveying exactly what King spells out for us here in it. But I love this because then it stops here and Jake says, "You need to see a shrink, Engineer Bob." Jake murmured and turned the page. Here was a picture of Bob bending over, looking beneath Charlie the Choo-Choo's automatic firebox. Jake wondered who was driving the train and watching out for cows, not to mention boys and girls, on the tracks while Bob was checking for stowaways, and guessed that Beryl Evans didn't know a lot about trains.
Yeah, there's that picture.
Yeah. So it's great. And I will also mention too, I did speed up the Frank's reading by a little bit. It's like 1.2% speed, just to make it a little bit quicker on this, because it is a little bit.
It's a whole book.
It's a lot more than we actually normally would sound clip. But Frank does such an incredible job, and that is the one difference, as we'll get into the next section here, is in the way I think Jake reads it. Like Charlie doesn't necessarily have a face on all these, and he mentioned it being like very 1940s, but the real one, Charlie has the face on pretty much every picture. So
evil looking little train. Look at this.
He's a happy train. There's no evil there.
You can't see it. It's all whitewashed, isn't it, for the light?
The light probably. Yeah, you probably have to back it up a little bit.
I don't think it will.
Yeah, I don't know if it will or not.
Dang it, I just realized I've been holding it up and I can't. You guys can't see it.
So let's go ahead and take the next bite here. Just an innocent train. That's all I'm saying, sir. Yeah. So look at that happy face on the screen there.
No.
So that like I said, we're just gonna pause here. So you have a note here for the Jake break.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot to write this one down. In this picture, however, it had clearly human features. Let's talk about Charlie, and this gave Jake a deep chill, despite Charlie's smile and the rather heavy-handed cuteness of the story. He didn't trust that smile. He turned to his final essay and scanned down the lines. "I'm pretty sure Blaine is dangerous," he read, "and that is the truth." He closed the folder, tapped his fingers on it thoughtfully for a few moments, and then returned to Charlie the Choo-Choo. So he doesn't trust this children's story here. He doesn't trust this train.
Yeah. And I don't know why. I mean, it
is so evil looking, dude.
We actually, I should have reached out to the person, but somebody tweeted to us, and they had their kid, a really young baby, with the book in front of them, and I retweeted it and stuff. And I should have asked if I could use it on the show. This would have been a perfect time to bring it in.
Oh, yeah.
Showing a little young kid being taught this. And they actually mentioned that what they would do is read this to their kid as they're growing up, and then not say anything to them, and then let them read The Dark Tower. See, that's planting seeds.
I could still have my kid read it.
Yeah, I mean, why not? see what the kid thinks. So let's go ahead and take to the next bite from Beryl Evans here. Again, great performance. And like I said, this whole thing is conveyed really well in this creation. The one you can buy. It's all told pretty well, word for word. Basically created exactly what King is explaining here, and great illustrations as well. So, but yes, we have another Jake break here.
Yep.
You want to go ahead and?
Yeah, Jake's looking at the pictures. Jake can imagine children all over America blatting their heads off at this point, and it occurred to him that there was a lot of stories for kids with stuff like this in them. Stuff that threw acid all over your emotions. Hansel and Gretel being turned out into the forest. Bambi's mother getting scragged by a hunter. And the death of Old Yeller. It was easy to hurt little kids, easy to make them cry. And this seemed to bring out a strangely sadistic streak in many storytellers, including, it seemed, Beryl Evans. I just want to pause there because also I would not be
Stephen
surprised.
King.
I would not be surprised if Tad was one of those people that would also enjoy doing that. But yeah, Stephen King does it too. Like, go and look. We've talked about it. Not many kids have happy stories when it comes to King.
Yeah.
There are happy stories that King writes. Good stories.
Yeah.
Not many kids have them, though, in his world.
No, it's true. It's true.
But Jake found he was not saddened by Charlie's relegation to the weedy wastelands at the outer edge of the mid-world train yards in St. Louis. Quite the opposite. Good, he thought. That's the place for him. That's the place, because he's dangerous. Let him rot there, and don't trust that tear in his eyes. They say crocodiles cry too.
So I also got to point out there's some things obviously that stand out. Susanna is the name of the daughter. Let's see, did it say Midworld is mentioned? Mm-hmm. There's a couple of things dropped in here.
The world has moved on.
Yeah, the world has moved on. There's a couple of things dropped in that is pretty cool to see.
Yeah.
That are definitely Dark Tower things that we've become familiar with.
Yeah.
So then it says that Jake read the rest rapidly. And I love this. It says, because it says it had a happy ending, of course, although it was undoubtedly that moment of despair at the edge of the train yard, which children remembered long after the ending had slipped in their minds. Do you find that true? Like, in your mind, like the traumatic things, the things that you remember from these things, like Bambi, Old Yeller, Red Fern Grows, like, so it is those, those desolate moments of agony that you remember, like, or like Never Ending Story, like, like you didn't watch that as a kid though, but it's like, do you remember, Artek sinking in the swamp of sadness, or do you remember the fact that they win at the end?
Well, even now, I mean, I've only seen Never Ending Story as an adult, or maybe high school was the first time I saw it.
Yeah.
But high school on is the only time, and that is the thing that comes to my mind is the horse.
Yeah. Artek. And I mean, I only think of Mork, the beast. The wolf.
Beasts are not fun, dude. I tell you, I've been warning you.
That thing creeped me the fuck out as a kid.
No, I think you actually got a point there, because if I said, "Hey, Tad, what's the first thing you think of when I say Lion King?"
Yeah, I mean,
a lot of people would probably say Mufasa's death.
Yeah,
but if I say,
I have to say Jeremy Irons in that great lion reading, Simba, what have you done, or what did you do, or whatever. And I'm like, dude, that is like the most like brutal thing to then lay that on that kid. I mean, of course, it's just a lion, so we don't have to worry about it. So. Let's go ahead and get the rest of Charlie here before we go through the rest of the subchapter. I mean, one, I remember like this actually kind of striking me a bit when it comes to the fact that most of these kid stories are very predictable.
Yeah.
Like I think it's just one of those things you just inherently know, but your mind doesn't necessarily lock onto. But it's just like, this felt like something that I really probably would have potentially read as a child.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I know King created it, but it's like, this just feels exactly right. And it's like, yeah, like it's because King understands as a storyteller how to basically recreate like, a short 15, 20 page, kids, book that has pictures. Like they're all very formulaic and stuff. So I remember that being kind of a thing where it's like, oh yeah, damn, like I can't believe he did this so well. But then I'm like, I guess it's just, as a kid,
it's the storyteller in him.
As a kid, you probably don't understand how formulaic they all are. You just love all these certain stories you read. But
yeah,
as an adult looking back, it's like, oh yeah, they all are kind of, whatever. So, and then a little bit further down here, Jake kind of mentions, the don't ask me silly questions, I don't play silly games. And then it says, Jake supposed Engineer Bob's smile was supposed to convey supreme happiness, but to him it looked like a grin of a lunatic. Charlie and Engineer Bob both looked like lunatics, and the more Jake looked at the kids, the more he thought of their expression, or the more he thought that their expressions looked like grimaces of terror. Let us off this train, those faces seemed to say. Please let us off this train alive. And be a happy choo-choo train until the day I die. It says in parentheses there. So Jake's kind of going back over it in his head. Jake closed the book and looked at it thoughtfully. He then opened it again and began to leaf through the pages, circling certain words and phrases that seemed to call out to him. The Midworld Railway Company, Engineer Bob, a small gruff voice, woo-woo, the first real friend he had had since his wife died long ago in New York, Mr. Martin, the world had moved on, and Susanna. He put the pen down. Why did these words and phrases call to him? The one about New York seemed obvious enough, but what about the others? For that matter, why this book? That he had been meant to buy was beyond question. If he hadn't had money in his pocket, he felt he would have simply grabbed it and bolted from the store. But why? He felt like a compass needle. The needle need know nothing about the magnetic north. It only knows that it must point in a certain direction, like it or not. So definitely bringing up some of those big questions again, and obviously some of the things that we mentioned earlier about things that were familiar to us are the things that draw him into this book more. So definitely very interesting.
I love King's storytelling here because the thing is that how long has he had this book now? Like, he's had it for
like what, maybe 12 hours ish?
No. Like in the book verse, like when you're reading it. So think of it as like, okay, in a TV episode, he picks up the book at the start of it, but then we're getting 2 more episodes before we get into this.
Oh, okay. I see.
King does this all the time where it's like, and then this happened. But let me tell you the story about this, and this first.
Yeah.
Before. This is really well done that, yes, he bought these books. He bought Riddle-Dee-Dum and Charlie the Choo-Choo before going and seeing the Rose. But the whole Rose thing distracted us, and then going home distracted us. We're finally getting to the book that he bought.
And the fight with the parents.
And the fight with the parents. All of that happened. We should have been more interested in what was going on with the book, but
books, but we lost sight of them. Kind of like I said earlier with the final essay. Like, I think you kind of lose sight of it with everything else that happened.
Exactly.
And then it's like, oh shit, the essay. And then it's like here, it's like, oh yeah, shit, the books that he got.
We got to go over those.
Yeah. So definitely awesome. Then it goes a little bit further down. It says he crawls into bed and he was going to fall asleep at his because he's going to fall asleep at his desk. He took off his shirt and gazed down at the front of Charlie the Choo-Choo again. That smile. He just didn't trust that smile. Not a bit.
Nope.
I mean, I think Jake's a little...
as you can see, you wouldn't trust that smile.
Looks happy to me. And those kids seem all happy in the back there. You know, they don't seem like they're screaming in terror. So...
Tad, you bad.
And I will say, I actually did get an extra, so... There you go, sir.
You're kidding me, right?
You now have a Charlie the Choo-Choo.
Thank you, sir.
Hashtag Tad is not terrible.
Yeah. You're doing this with the goal in mind of me reading this to my daughter.
I mean, it's a happy coincidence.
Yeah.
But no, I actually had originally bought 2, I think, because I was like, oh, I'd have one to like thumb through or whatever, but then I also keep one like nice. But then it's just like, it's not like I'm like creasing things out on this. I'm like, do I really need 2? And I just honestly forgot them in my drawer here for the longest time. But then over the last like couple weeks, a couple episodes, I think I pulled it out at one point and I was like, oh yeah, Charlie the Choo-Choo. But I was like, oh yeah, I forgot I had 2. So yes, for you, Sir Beryl Evans, timeless classic, Charlie the Choo-Choo.
Lunatics, the lot of them.
So then that jumps us over to subchapter 23. This is the last subchapter of this entire chapter. So you want to go ahead
I'm just going to read the whole thing. It's very short. But again, what we were just talking about. King brings up something, and then we just promptly forget about it with what's going on.
Yeah.
Sleep didn't come as soon as Jake had hoped. The voices begin to argue again. I've forgotten about the voices with everything. We have not mentioned the voices hardly at all this whole episode.
For the whole episode, yeah.
Okay, so there's one.
The last time was before he entered the realm of the Rose, basically.
Like that's when he got on we heard him.
When he got on that block, and like even then, like the last time we heard mention of it was when he was like, wait, I don't hear the voices anymore. And it was like a revelation of like, holy shit.
Mm-hmm. The voices had begun to argue again about whether he was alive or dead, and they kept him awake. At last, he sat up in bed with his eyes closed and his fists planted against his temples. Quit, he screamed at them. Just quit. You were gone all day, be gone again. I would if he'd just admit I'm dead, one of the voices said sulkily. I would if he'd just take a For God's sake, look around and admit I'm clearly alive, the other snapped back.
And I will say that this is all italicized. None of this is out loud. This is all in his head.
Yep. He was going to scream right out loud. There was no way to hold it back. He could feel it coming up his throat like vomit. He opened his eyes and saw his pants lying over the seat of the desk chair. An idea occurred to him. He got out of bed, went to the chair, and felt in his right front pocket of the pants. The silver key was still there, and the moment his fingers closed around it, the voices ceased. Tell him, he thought, with no idea who the thought was for. Tell him to grab the key. The key makes the voices go. He went back to bed and was asleep with the key clasped loosely in his hand 3 minutes after his head hit the pillow.
That just gave me some chills there, because he's talking basically to the universe for, and we know that at least in part, a key exists on Roland's side.
Yep.
So who he's speaking out to there is he's found the solution that is plaguing our gunslingers on the other side.
Yeah.
Is Roland's madness. So very cool. And I will say we also did skip the note, or we didn't really note it, but the fact that in the vacant lot, when he picked up Charlie the Choo-Choo, the key fell out, and then he put it in his pocket. That's why it's in the pants at that point. So,
but there's the two things that he referenced that hadn't been brought up recently.
Yeah.
The voices, and then the key.
I love also seeing the voices and what they're saying. Like, they're actually not only just arguing with themselves, but they're taking him into account too. Yeah. Where he's just like, quit. You're gone all day, just quit. And it's like, I would if he just admitted I'm dead. And the other one's like, I would if he admitted where I was alive. So it's like, there's actually kind of a three-way conversation going. Like, because I always just pictured it being like, early on as we were reading it for the first time, I pictured just these two voices ping-ponging back and forth in his head, whatever. But now it's like, oh shit, no, like they're actually responding to him and reacting.
I picture the angel and the demon on the shoulder.
Yeah.
And they're just yelling across at each other.
Yeah.
But not responding to you because you're still.
Yeah.
But now then you do the, hey, shut up. Hey, shut up. And then it's like, oh, yeah, well, I'm going to talk to you too.
Yeah. So I do like that. And as you mentioned, the key is something that we kind of lost sight of, as well as the voices, and that is the solution. He picks it up, and that is the end of the subchapter and the end of the chapter. So pretty cool. Huge deep dive here into Jake and what's going on with him. We hadn't seen him pretty much since he died. So to see him reappear is pretty awesome. And that will leave us at a spot where, let's go ahead and I'll just highlight it. The next one is 3, which we talked about it before. It's like book 1, book 2, and book 3 in this book, the way it's broken up. And the third one is actually, I'm sorry, it's not even book, because there's book 1, and then there's book 2, and then there's the 3 big chapters in each one. So this is entering the third and final chapter of this book, and then there's a second. But however that all breaks out. So this one is 3, and it's called Door and Demon. So just a little tease for what we're so we went Bear and Bone, Key and Rose, Door and Demon. So it gives us a little bit of a maybe taste of, I don't know, that seems like the funnest one to me, as a horror fan and stuff. Door and Demon, that sounds fun. That sounds like a lot of fun.
No.
So yeah, that's the episode. I definitely love this stuff, this section. I remember when I was first reading this, what I really loved was the fact that getting so much from Jake, because we got to know him a bit in book 1, but like not a ton, so this is really where you get to know him, and I just remember really liking the fact of getting to know him, because I didn't hate him in the first book. I liked him, so to get him, and obviously we thought he died, so it's like the fact that now you've kind of undone that, it's like, oh shit, now he's alive, and then to spend all this time with him, I remember really enjoying that a lot. When I was reading this the first time, I remember just being overjoyed to have Jake back, and also to see all this that's happening, as much as some of it's a bummer, but it was pretty cool to find him again. Just kind of a capping thought for this section. So
bringing back a character that you were first introduced to, and just like, oh, okay, here's like the heart and soul of the story. This is what's going to keep us grounded, because we obviously can't root for this guy that just slaughtered an entire town with men, women, and children. Yeah. We're going to like this boy. And then the boy.
And he's from our world.
Yeah, he's from our world. Okay, so that's where we're going to relate to the story and everything like that. Nope, he's dead.
Yeah,
he's dead. Shit.
But bringing him. Roland killed him.
Yeah, and Roland killed him. And then we bring him back. It's like, okay, whew. Roland's redeemable. Okay, the boy's not dead for sure.
And it wasn't even the next book. The fact that King allowed it to go basically 2 books before we get back to this was like, I didn't expect to see him back, to be honest with you. Like after maybe there was like a slight thought that we might see him again in some way, just because there's other worlds in these, like the line. But then when book 2 happened and everything the way it played out, I was just like, oh, okay, I guess not, because I honest to God thought he'd be behind one of the 3 doors, maybe the 3rd door. I don't know how much sense that would have made, because
I honestly thought he would too, especially with all the stuff that they were talking about with Jack Mort and everything like that. I'm like, oh, so he's gonna be Jack Mort, but he's gonna bring Jake back.
Yeah, and that's
what he's gonna do.
That's exactly what I thought too. It's like, oh, but even before we got to the door, I was just like, oh, 3 doors, and as they're going, I'm like, the 3rd door, I'm like, dude, it has to be Jake.
Yeah, it's gotta be.
He said there's other worlds in these. Like, I figured he would come back.
I just couldn't understand how to fit the pusher with Jake.
Yeah, I know. And then we come in and see him though, and then I was like, that's how it's gonna happen. Cool, he's gonna be able to.
There it is.
He's gonna, and then he didn't, and I was just like, all right, I guess that's it. That's I just felt that Jake at that point was maybe a close-ended loop. So jumping into this book then, and then finally getting back to him was kind of a cool surprise. I remember being pretty stoked on it when I first read it back in the day. So we'll go ahead and hit our closing information as we always do. First of all, if you want to subscribe to us on any podcasting service that you use, we appreciate that. If you subscribe, rate, and review especially. You can stream us on Spotify or Stitcher, Apple Podcasting, any of the apps out there. If you want to find the show notes, do that at darktowerpalaver.com, as well as the link to the shirts, the merchandise, not just shirts. You can do anything. If you want to get a Dark Tower Palaver pillow, you can do that on there.
Or a sticker.
I do need to get a pillow. I'm
actually get a pillow?
I'm going to get one. Yeah, that's pretty fun. You can do all that. Go to the little icon that looks like a box, the top of a box. Click on that. That'll bring you to our store. Then if you also want to support the podcast, you can do that on Patreon at patreon.com/darktowerpalaver. You can join our Discord server if you, at any level, and you'll be able to torment Peter throughout the weeks.
Stop telling him to do that.
I mean, it's fun once everyone gets it and does it once and like, oh, this is fun, as well as we have our monthly hangouts, which we're now doing, where the patrons of the will actually kind of dictate what we're covering on those hangouts. So that's a lot of fun, and there's some different benefits and stuff, but go ahead and check that out at darktowerpalaver.com. And then if you want to contact us in any other way, Peter can let you know the best way to do that.
Best way is to email us is darktowerpalaver@gmail.com. Our YouTube is youtube.com/darktowerpalaver. Our social media is facebook.com/darktowerpalaver. The Twitter is @darktowerpod. That's @darktowerpod. And then Instagram is darktowerpalaver. All one word, no spaces.
I think we might have to drop some Charlie the Choo-Choo on Instagram.
You think so?
With this episode, it's in a Charlie kind of mood. Just that happy train that he is, the innocent train that Jake is maligning here by saying that he looks evil. So, but that is it for this episode. We'll sign off as we always do by saying long days and pleasant nights.
Long days and pleasant nights, folks.
All right, everyone on the YouTube side, thank you guys for joining us. You guys weren't as talkative, but do see that we have the viewer count here. So you guys looks like have been listening. So definitely appreciate you guys. It's always fun to have you guys with us. Just a tease. I didn't throw it out at the beginning of the episode because actually because I forgot, but people don't hit the book clubs as often. There's some people that save them and stuff, but if you're here listening, just know that we have 3 episodes in July, and not only that, but also going we have to move one of our episodes around, our first episode of August around, and so what will actually happen, that one's also being changed to a roundtable. We'll have the reasoning for that as we get closer, so you will not see a book club until the 28th of August, so a little ways away, but we have 3 roundtables coming over the next chunk of time. So join us in a fortnight. We have our roundtable 108 coming up for that. So that'll be a lot of fun. And you guys have a good one. Have a good 4th if you're here in the United States. And if you're not, especially in the UK, maybe have a glass of tea and we throw into the harbor, but you guys want to drink it, so go ahead. Us unruly colonials.
Yeah, you bloody colonials. I heard a joke about the British and the Americans, and I wanted to tell it real fast. Do you know why the British stops calling themselves the British? They call themselves the British. They leave the T off because it upsets Americans.
Get out of here. Get out of here. You're not welcome in the studio anymore. Get out of here with that nonsense. All right, we will see you guys in a fortnight.
Bye, everyone.